Chapter 8:16. Rummaging through the wardrobe, Lily packed all the valuable clothes and shoes and sent them to the second-hand market for more than 30,000 yuan. In addition to the original more than 10,000 yuan in the card, and more than 90,000 yuan from the wine tray recently, she had a total of 150,000 yuan. After transferring 150,000 yuan to Louis Han, she sent a smiley face to his WeChat. Louis Han, I've returned you 150,000 yuan, and I'm afraid I can't return the other 50,000 yuan. Louis Han did not reply immediately, and Lily counted the money. The original 300 or 400 yuan, plus the 700 yuan from selling hair, totaled more than 1,000 yuan. Seeing the money, Lily felt relieved. Walking out of the second-hand market, Lily was bathed in the sun, squinting and looking up at the sun above. It was very big, very round, and very dazzling. Picking up her mobile phone, Lily took a picture of the big sun, posted it on WeChat Moments, and edited, "Today's weather is great. It seems that I haven't seen such good weather for a long time. Cherish every moment. Love. I haven't had a big meal for a long time. I'm going to have a big meal." Lily clicked on her profile picture and scrolled down. The most recent WeChat Moments was the company's anniversary tour 6 months ago. At that time, she saw others posting on WeChat Moments, and she also posted one. With a smile, Lily put away her phone, stopped a taxi, and went to the best Western restaurant in the capital that she knew of. Stopping the car, Lily took her bag and walked in. Her figure was graceful, and her smile was light. Naturally, it became a beautiful scenery, attracting everyone's attention. In the revolving restaurant on the top floor, Lily sat down and ordered a steak, her favorite chicken breast salad, a cup of coffee, and a soup. Seeing the long-lost dishes, Lily smiled with satisfaction. She took a few photos with her mobile phone and saved them in her mobile phone. After wiping her hands with a wet tissue, she gracefully and slowly cut the steak. A piece of steak in her mouth, Lily's heart was indescribably satisfied. Her eyes were hot, but her lips were full of smile. "It's delicious. It's been a long time since I've had such a taste." In the past few years, she was not living, but surviving. It was just that the living conditions were far more difficult than she used to be. Perhaps if he had never been happy, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state. As she ate, her eyes became hotter and hotter. She took a deep breath and picked up her cell phone to take a selfie. Compared to yesterday, the short-haired girl in the phone was less mature, less charming, and more energetic and playful. Lily was very satisfied with the look of her short hair. She took a few photos and sent them to her WeChat Moments along with the photos of the dishes. She wrote, "New hairstyle. It's rare to have a big meal. I'm so happy." After the meal, Louis Han finally replied with only 2 words, "Liar." Inexplicably, Lily thought it was funny and replied to him with an emoji. "Evil smile. Louis Han, your life is good, much better than mine." Yuli. "Just a Louis Han, I'm busy now." Yuli. "Okay." After paying the bill, he had exactly 100 yuan left in his wallet. After taking a taxi home, he only had a little more than $10 left from the last $100. As soon as he got out of the car, an old and dirty beggar greeted him with a broken bowl in his hand. Lily gave him the last $12 she had, and then climbed to the 4th floor in high heels. Chapter 8:17. Humming a little tune, Lily walked into the living room. She took out a notebook and a pen and sat down at the small table. The smell of gas was getting stronger and stronger. Lily bit the pen and frowned in disgust. But after thinking for a long time, she didn't know what to write. She simply held the pen and sketched the lines on it, and soon the lines of a man's face were outlined. There was an evil smile on his face, a pair of peach eyes, and a few lines were drawn vividly. Lily saw this face and smiled softly. Then, she drew 2 little babies under the man. With pacifiers in their mouths and wrapped in swaddling clothes, the 2 little babies looked exactly the same. Lily even laughed, and her eyes were hot. Throwing the pen away, Lily picked up her mobile phone, looked through the address book, clicked on Louis Han's chat, and made a video call. Louis Han seemed to be a little busy, and it took a long time for him to get through. As soon as he opened the phone, Lily saw the face she hadn't seen for more than 4 years. His hair was half wet, and a towel was on his neck. It looked like he had just taken a shower. "Louis Han. What's wrong?" Louis Han wiped his hair and held the phone, not caring. Yu Lily suddenly smiled happily, looked at the face on the phone, and said, "You actually answered. I just wanted to try." Louis Han heard this and was a little upset. "So you came to try your luck?" "Yes, this shows that my luck is still very good." Yu Lily smiled happily, looked at him and said, "Louis Han, are you still single?" "What does it have to do with you?" Louis Han was even more upset, looked at her little face with a bright smile and said, "Are you very free?" Yu Lily's heart was sour, and the smell of gas was getting stronger and stronger. Even Yu Lily was a little short of breath. Gently shaking her head, Yu Lily pretended to be relaxed and said, "I'm very busy, but I still have to take some time to talk to you." "You seem to be in a good mood." Louis Han yawned. "I'm sleepy. What do you want to say?" When Yu Lily heard that, her smile deepened. She chuckled and said, "Maybe you don't treat me as a friend, but the only people I've ever considered a friend are you and Qianqian. Qianqian is very happy now. I hope you can find your other half as soon as possible and live a happier life." Louis Han pouted. "This is not something you would say." "What the hell?" The smile on Yu Lily's face became even brighter. She shook her head and softly said, "I'm just here to meet a friend. If I suddenly die one day and don't even have a friend, that would be too sad. Although these two friends might not be considered friends." "You wish." "It is said that the scourge lives for 1,000 years. People like you will live at least 100 years, Louis Han said half-jokingly, looking at her. "Why did you suddenly mention this?" Yu Lily smiled brightly, shrugged and said, "Hey, it's so boring. I want to talk to you, but I'm serious. Goodbye, Louis Han." After that, she hung up the video call. Louis Han didn't care, threw the phone on the sofa, and picked up the hairdryer to dry his hair. Chapter 8:18. The feeling of nausea and vomiting came. Everything around her was swaying. Her head hurt, and she collapsed on the sofa. Finally she was free. So tired and sleepy. How long had it been? In order to survive, she had not had a good rest. Now, she could finally have a good sleep. Lying on the sofa, Yu Lily slightly narrowed her eyes, and sadness came like a tide. No friends, no family. It was estimated that the first person to find out that she was dead would be the landlady next door. One day in the future, someone might think of it and ask, "Ah, where did Yu Lily go?" When they found out that Yu Lily was dead, what would their expressions be like? Pity? Sympathy? Or expressionless, without any emotion? But what is certain is that her disappearance will not bring a little sadness to anyone, bring a little fluctuation. Her existence had always been superfluous. Only she alone, in this corner that no one knew, was struggling to breathe. Therefore, the director of the orphanage named her Yu Lily. Yu Lily tried to turn over and felt that she still had a little energy. Lying on the sofa, she picked up her mobile phone and opened her WeChat moments. There were a lot of likes and comments. Many of them were former colleagues and former classmates. However, many of them were friends who liked it. Looking at the comments, some people said that she was getting more and more beautiful, and some people were regretting that her original long hair was fluttering. Yu Lily curled her lips and replied with an emoji. Haha. Suddenly, a new comment came in. It was from Louis Han. He said, "Are you with O Ming again?" "Again?" Yu Lily replied, "No, Louis Han. The back of the photo is exposed." Yu Lily was stunned and clicked on the big picture. Just behind Yu Lily's selfie, there was a figure. The focus of the camera was on Yu Lily's face, and the small figure behind her only occupied a little. It seemed that O Ming was sitting on the table behind her, looking forward, and his eyes were looking at the camera. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She enlarged the photo until it was all mosaic. Yu Lily was sure that this person was really O Ming. But when did he sit behind her? She actually didn't notice. It turned out that she was so close to him today. How nice. Yu Lily's head was buzzing, and her vision was getting darker and darker. She couldn't even see the phone screen clearly. Lying on the sofa, Yu Lily gasped. But when he inhaled, all he could smell was the smell of gas. Out of the corner of her eye, Yu Lily glanced at the small figure in the photo. She tried her best to smile and said, "Goodbye, O Ming." That day, O Ming had been busy from dawn to dusk. At noon, he had invited some foreign guests to the revolving restaurant for lunch. Who knew that he would actually see someone he would never have expected? You Lily. She cut her hair. His long black hair was cut to the length of his ears. Sitting in the back, Oh Ming watched with his own eyes as she took out her phone to take selfies. Sometimes she pouted, and sometimes she made a peace sign. Cliché. They hadn't seen each other for so many years, but her selfie skills were still so bad. However, he could tell that she was in a good mood. What happened last night seemed to be nothing more than a haircut. Oh Ming looked away and sneered coldly. What a big heart. Chapter 8:19. Oh Ming felt ridiculous for his naivety just now, and then tried not to look at her. Just when he was talking to the foreign guests, he couldn't help but look at her. She seemed to be in a good mood and posted several times on her WeChat moments. This was something she had never done before. He once asked her, "Why don't you like to take selfies or post on WeChat moments? Other girls like to do this kind of thing." She looked disdainful. "What's there to take selfies? I'm afraid that my charm will shock the entire WeChat moments. If all men fall in love with me, what can I do?" Oh Ming couldn't help but laugh at her shameless answer. But later, Oh Ming learned that it was because of inferiority. Because she was a mistress, she didn't want others to know everything he gave her. Once her luxurious life was discovered, those who originally targeted her and hated her would definitely take advantage of it and spread the news more wantonly. For example, Yu Lily is a mistress of a rich second generation. Yu Lily sells her body to earn tuition fees. Yu Lily lives a luxurious life without shame. All these rumors made her feel very uncomfortable. Over time, she didn't have this habit. Good life, bad life, it was better to let her know all about it. There was no need to let others know what your own life was like. It was meaningless to be looked down upon or envied. Oh Ming had read all of this in her diary. Seeing that she finished eating and left, Oh Ming finally stopped thinking and continued to discuss the contract with the foreign guests. After eating and seeing the foreign guests off, Su Cheng suddenly called. Oh Ming leaned on the driver's seat of the Ferrari. Last night's hangover and insomnia made him a little tired today. He picked up the phone, put it on speaker and put it aside. "Mr. O, there seems to be something wrong with Miss Yu." "Ha!" Oh Ming gently pressed his temple, squinted and leaned back in the chair. "She spent all the money, sold all the valuable clothes and shoes, and then returned the money to Liu Yihan. Then she went to the revolving restaurant you just went to and had a meal, spending more than 1,000 yuan. You know, before yesterday, she ate instant noodles or fast food every day, and her daily consumption was less than 50 yuan. Hearing this, Oh Ming finally straightened his body, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. What kind of life was she living? Did he cheat so much money just to repay his debt? His heart ached, and his face darkened. He started the car and asked, "Where is she now?" "She went home." Su Cheng's voice was a little hesitant as he said, "I checked, and there was no money left in her card. I guess she didn't have much cash left." This situation? Oh Ming's heart sank and he snapped, "Send me her address." "Yes." "Keep an eye on her. If anything happens, rush in immediately." "Aye." Su Cheng hesitated and said cautiously, "I'm at the company now. Because she went home I didn't follow her, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt something was wrong. F***CK. Oh Ming couldn't help but swear. His eyes were red with anger. "Are you F***king brainless?" Chapter 8:20. He dialed Yu Lily's number and watched her drive the black Ferrari on a rampage. Yu Lily saw the number and felt like she was dreaming. Sliding the screen of the mobile phone, Yu Lily picked it up. "Where are you?" Oh Ming's voice was cold and deep, and there was a hint of panic in it. However, Yu Lily had no time to analyze the emotions in it. She put her hand down, chuckled and asked, "It's none of your business." Her voice was weak, and then she hung up the phone. After hanging up, she was inexplicably happy. She actually threw her face at Oh Ming before she died. Just like before, it was so cool. Yu Lily buried her head with a smile, and her tears seeped into the sofa. Oh Ming heard the voice, and his heart sank. When he dialed again, no one answered the phone. He quickly drove to the address given by Su Cheng and ran up 3 steps at a time. 403,403. Seeing the house number, Oh Ming looked around and found that there was even no doorbell. The door was a thick stainless steel security door. Oh Ming slammed his palm and shouted, "You Lily, open the door." The sound of the palm slamming the door came in, and Yu Lily vaguely seemed to hear Oh Ming's voice. Her head was getting heavier and heavier, and her head was getting muddled. When Yu Lily heard this voice, she smiled sadly. Hallucination. Committing suicide with gas is really happy. Even the auditory hallucination can make me hear the voice I want to hear the most. That's great. Lying on the sofa, Yu Lily slowly closed her eyes. Oh Ming slammed the door hard, but there was no response for a long time. Oh Ming was more and more scared, and he slammed the door like crazy. But that door wasn't something that could be opened just by ramming. His heart was getting more and more panicked. It was like something was passing away quickly, and his heart was terribly empty. Even when he saw her covered in blood under him, Oh Ming had not been so afraid. The door of 402 next door suddenly opened, and a middle-aged woman looked over and said, "What are you doing?" Her tone was bad. When Oh Ming saw her, his eyes lit up, and he hurriedly said, "Do you know the landlord here? Is the person living here Yu Lily?" The middle-aged woman was stunned and said, "I am the landlord." "Who are you? Why are you looking for you?" "I'm her man." Oh Ming almost roared. He pointed at the door and said, "Open the door. Something might have happened to her." The middle-aged woman looked at him strangely and picked up her cell phone to dial Yu Lily's number. Yu Lily's cell phone rang above her head. She could hear it, but she had no strength. He took a glance and saw that it was the landlord's wife. Yu Lily slapped the phone away, and it fell to the ground. The soundproofing here was very good, and the ringing of a cell phone could not pass through the door. Oh Ming was going crazy. With red eyes he roared, "Open the door. If something happens to her, don't even think about having it easy." The landlady was shocked. She looked at his suspicious face and shoved him angrily. Then she closed the door and locked it. She said to the inside, "Xiaofan, go next door and see if Yu is there." A woman's voice came from inside. Oh Ming waited for Little Snow to come out, but after a long time, no one came out. Oh Ming couldn't wait any longer. He went to room 403 and banged on the door. He shouted, "You open the door!" Chapter 821. The cell phone on the ground was still ringing, like a hypnotic music, drawing Yu Lily's consciousness little by little, and it was difficult for her to open her eyes. "Yu Lily, you!" Oh Ming roared with red eyes, but it didn't work, so he turned around and knocked on the door of room 402. "Open the door, Yu Lily is alone inside, something bad will happen." "My woman is inside. Open the door." However, the landlady did not pay attention to him anymore. Looking at him behind the door, it was like looking at a madman. Oh Ming was a little frustrated, and for a while, he felt at a loss. What to do? Yu Lily had a habit, that was, she must have cash with her, or a little deposit in her card. It didn't matter how much the deposit was, as long as she had it. But today, she had taken out all of her savings, not a single cent was left. Moreover, she didn't usually take selfies at all, and she didn't like to post it on WeChat moments, but today she posted a picture of smiling happily, which was too abnormal. Yu Lily was alone in there. She was acting so abnormally. She must be preparing for something bad. Oh Ming didn't dare to think, and he didn't want to think, what Yu Lily was doing inside. Snowy climbed over the railing, and the cell phone inside was ringing, and the clear and melodious ringtone came out, the most classic Apple ringtone. And just on the edge of the sofa facing the French window, a bare foot was exposed, white and tender, which made Snowy jealous. She patted the French window and shouted, "You!" However, there was no answer. The French window door was locked, and the person inside did not respond at all. Snowy patted a few times outside, shouted a few times, and finally returned the way she came. "Mom, Yu seems to have fainted on the sofa, and the cell phone inside has been ringing, but I can't wake her up." Snowy's voice came out, and Oh Ming heard it clearly. Looking inside, Oh Ming's eyes were red and he shouted, "Something must have happened, open the door." The landlady also knew that things might be unusual, so she quickly took the key and went out. There was a large bunch of keys, and the landlady checked the label number one by one, squinting her eyes and slightly tilting her head. Oh Ming couldn't stand it anymore, so he grabbed the big bunch of keys, looked through it, and soon found the key to room 403. However, when he opened it, he found that there was another wooden door inside. Oh Ming almost went crazy. He searched for the key and opened the door. However, when the door was opened a little, a strong and pungent smell of gas came out. When the landlady smelled it, her heart skipped a beat. She quickly stepped back and looked inside in disbelief. As for Ming, he took a big step and ran in like a madman. At a glance, he saw Yu Lily sitting on the sofa. Yu Lily's face turned red. Her lips, face, and skin all had an unusual shade of red. With a big stride forward, Ming's legs almost turned to jelly. His eyes stung, and his vision blurred. Ming's heart felt like it was being ruthlessly grabbed by something. It was as if it was about to break, and the pain was hysterical. An indescribable sense of regret engulfed him so tightly that he was almost suffocating. He was so flustered that he didn't know where to put his hands and feet. With great difficulty, Ming picked her up and rushed out of the door. His breathing became more urgent as he carried her down to the 4th floor. He placed her in the car, and the Ferrari went on a rampage without any sense of reason, speeding straight ahead. You're not allowed to die. Death. Chapter 822. Yu Lily had a dream. In the dream, she went back to the day when the doctor announced that she was pregnant. Because of taking contraceptive pills for a long time, your body may have antibodies to contraceptive pills, or you did not take other safety measures, which led to pregnancy. But according to the situation you described, I do not recommend you to have this child. Contraceptive pills have a great impact on the fetus. Now you can't see any problems, but it is difficult to guarantee that after you are born, the fetus will be deformed or have some other problems. Yu Lily touched her belly, looked down at the doctor in front of her, and asked, for example, mental retardation and cerebral palsy? The doctor nodded sympathetically. Pregnancy still needs to be prepared. This situation is too sudden, and it is not a good time for adults and children. While the fetus is still young, abort the child, and don't take contraceptive pills in the future. It is very bad for your health. Coming out of the hospital, Yu Lily's mind was in a mess. She was pregnant. However, the child was likely to be deformed. What should I do? Should I tell Ming? No way. If I tell Ming, he will definitely blame me. Blame me for taking contraceptive pills. Blame me for not protecting myself. However, he had taken protective measures every time. Why did she suddenly get pregnant? Yu Lily drove back to the villa, but before she went in, she heard Ming on the phone. Ming's back was to the door, and Yu Lily subconsciously walked lightly, so the man inside did not notice her return. Listening to his tone, Ming seemed to be a little impatient and said to the phone, Mom, my career is not stable yet. When the time is ripe, I will be engaged to Miss Shen. Engaged? Yu Lily stood at the door as if she had been struck by lightning. Ming is getting engaged? Ming is getting engaged. Didn't he say that he wanted to marry me? He also secretly ordered a ring and secretly prepared a wedding dress. Could it be that all of this was fake? Could it be that these were all prepared for the so-called engagement partner, and not for me? What am I? A mistress? Or a bed partner? Yu Lily stood in the same place, looking at Ming's tall back, and her mind was blank. Ming hung up the phone and was about to turn around. Yu Lily quickly took a step back and quietly avoided his sight. She was confused. Yu Lily sneaked into his study and sat down in front of the desk. The design drafts and sample drawings were all there. It was beautiful. Every detail was delicately and carefully drawn. Originally, she thought that Ming had prepared these things for her. But from the looks of it now, she was thinking too much. Yu Lily's heart was filled with indescribable disappointment. She reached out and touched her heart, and an indescribable bitterness surged. He was so sad. So, it was just her own wishful thinking. Forget it, she was just a kept woman, wasn't she? What right did he have to be sad? What right did he have to be unhappy? From the moment she decided to give herself to him, she was destined to lose many things. No love, no freedom, no self-respect, no identity. Everything was self-inflicted. He didn't force her. She did it willingly, didn't she? But why did her heart hurt so much now? Was it just because he was the father of the child? Chapter 823. It didn't take long for Ming to go out. He didn't come back for several days. Just like before, he didn't greet her, nor did he say anything to her. He just disappeared. Yu Lily was in the villa, and her mood was in a mess every day. Every day, she wondered where he had gone. Did he fall asleep in the arms of another woman? Was he indulging in debauchery in a place that she didn't know? However, what did it have to do with her? These things were not something that she could control, were they? He must have a lot of girlfriends outside. This time, I'm afraid he wants to get engaged. But that person would not be me. He would marry another woman and keep a mistress at the same time. And I was the canary that he kept. Her wings were broken and she was locked in the cage, suffering the scolding around her. But at this time, she was pregnant with a child that was doomed to be born. The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. On the fourth day, Lily went to a private clinic to get an abortion pill. After taking the first pill, there was a clear pain in her abdomen. Curling up on the bed, Lily looked pale. Looking at herself in the dressing mirror not far away, she was sweating all over. However, at this time, Lily felt that she was humble and incompetent. Not only could she not get the person she liked, but she could not keep the father of the child. Now she could not even keep her own child. Lily was swept by despair. She gently closed her eyes, and a drop of tears slipped quietly. On the second day after she took the pill, Ming suddenly came back. At that time, Lily had just taken a bath, and Ming came back from outside. Seeing her in a bathrobe and her hair was half wet, he went up and hugged her from behind. The fragrance of the shower gel came from her body into Ming's nose. Ming stretched his head out and leaned over to gently kiss her cheek and her lips. Lily avoided him with some disgust. Finally, she couldn't help saying what she had been thinking for a long time. "Oh, let's break up." Ming clung to her and kept kissing her. He turned her over, stroked her waist with his big hands, and slowly moved his hands to stir up the fire. Aware of Ming's presumptuous actions, Lily felt even more uncomfortable. In the end, he only had a physical need for her. Lily avoided his movement, and there was disgust in her eyes. She pushed him away. "I'm serious, Ming." Ming paused and looked into her eyes. Lily's beautiful big eyes were looking at her, and her eyes were full of seriousness. Ming looked at her for a long time and said, "I won't allow it." He held her firmly in his arms and whispered in her ear, "Give it up." Lily pushed him away with both hands and said seriously, "I don't want to be with you, Ming. I'm serious. Let me go. I can't stand it anymore." "Let you go?" Ming sneered and lifted her chin with his big hand. Are you mistaken? It's not that I don't want to let you go, but you can't leave me at all. Do you think you can still live so comfortably without me?" Lily's heart ached. She stared at him with her eyes wide open and retorted, "Who do you think you are? No one can survive without them. Ming, you are too full of yourself." Chapter 8:24. As he spoke, he had pushed her down on the bed and whispered, "If you leave me, do you think you will still have those famous brands? Do you think it is so easy to earn money in this world? Don't be too naive, Ming. I know you too well." Anger rushed up to his chest and surged out. Lily couldn't help but blush, and she slapped him hard in the face. Ming was beaten until he closed his eyes, but his face suddenly became gloomy. It didn't hurt, but for a person like Ming, this slap was tantamount to great humiliation. Ming angrily grabbed her hand and growled with a sullen face, "Am I wrong? You, a woman, are vain, love-face, and think that you have self-esteem, but in fact, you feel so inferior that you can only use famous brands to cover up your lack of confidence." Every word that Ming said hit Lily's sore spot. Lily's face became pale inch by inch. Ming saw the change of her expression, and there was a flash of coldness in his eyes. He continued to say, "People like you can do anything for money. Do you dare to say that when you were with me, it was not because I treated you well, and it was not because I gave you money so that you didn't have to worry about food and clothing?" Lily's breathing became more and more rapid. She looked at him and loudly refuted, "No." Lily, who are you kidding? You obviously thought that I was 7 years older than you. You don't know that you have the habit of talking in your sleep, do you? Why, after leaving me, did you go to find that Lu guy? Ming clamped her chin, and his eyes were full of sarcasm. You can only sell for such a high price with me. How much money do you think that Lu guy can give you? Only I, Ming, can satisfy you, whether it's financially or physically. As he said that, he tore her bathrobe with his big hand, put his knee on her lower abdomen, and whispered, "Calm down, you Lily. When did I not treat you well? Isn't it good to stay with me? Why do you have to make me angry? You were not so disobedient before." Ming squinted and looked at Yu Lily in front of him. He saw that her face became paler and paler, and there were big beads of sweat on her forehead. Ming was shocked, reached out to touch her forehead, and asked, "What's wrong?" "Cold." Her forehead felt extremely cold. Ming was shocked, but he found that the smile on her face was getting wider and wider. On her pale face, it looked strange and cruel. Yu Lily laughed loudly. Her laughter was sick, weak, and pale. He lowered his head and looked down. Ming followed her gaze and looked down. At a glance, he saw a shocking patch of blood red. His heart skipped a beat, and he almost fell off the bed. Blood. So much blood. Looking at the blood, Ming widened his eyes in disbelief. "Ming, do you know? I'm pregnant." Ming stood rooted to the ground, looking at the large pool of blood below her, not knowing what to do. "Your child has been squashed to death by you. Are you happy?" Looking at Ming's expression, Yu Lily suddenly felt a sense of revenge. But at the same time, there was also an indescribable sorrow. This was also her child, her first child. Some people say that the birth of every child is a gift from the heavens to their parents. But now, for the sake of her so-called freedom, she had personally removed this blessing. Happy. Happy. She didn't know if Ming would be happy, but she herself didn't feel the joy she had imagined. On the contrary, there was an indescribable sorrow. Chapter 825. She had successfully retaliated against this man and successfully hurt this man. Yu Lily wanted to laugh, but she couldn't laugh anymore. The pain was like falling, as if something was passing away quickly. Under such severe pain, Yu Lily lost consciousness. When she woke up, she was in surgery. The doctor said there were 2 pregnancy sacs. They were the twins that Ming had always wanted. Hearing the doctor's words, Yu Lily's heart was sad, and she couldn't help crying on the operating table. Twins, they are actually twins. 2 children. How lucky she was to get 2 children, but she couldn't keep them at all. I'm sorry. After being sedated, Yu Lily passed out. When she woke up, Ming was not around. The next day, Ming came to the hospital. He looked at Yu Lily with unspeakable hatred in his eyes. Yu Lily clearly noticed the change in his mood and sat on the bed silently. "Yu Lily, do you know what you have done?" Ming's eyes were red, and he looked at her with hatred and anger. "Do you know what you have done?" Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat, and her breathing suddenly became rapid. She turned her head away from him. "Am I not good enough to you, Yu Lily? After so many years of affection, is it not as good as your first love that you can't get? Why did you hurt my child? Why did you?" Ming's eyes were scarlet, staring at her with unforgivable hatred and incomprehensible complexity. He looked at her with misty eyes. "Why didn't you tell me that the child is innocent? If you had told me, everything that happened now would not have happened." Yu Lily turned to look at him. Her eyes were burning, but she couldn't help but have a bright and beautiful smile on her face. With a strong sense of sarcasm, she looked at him as if she was looking at a fool. "Ha, Ming, do you really think you are so charming?" Such words fell into Ming's ears, and it was like a spark falling into gunpowder, which made his eyelids twitch. "Don't King tease me. My purpose from the beginning is very clear. I want your money. Now that I have enough money to spend, it is normal that I want to break up with you. Why do I want to have your child? I am not so cheap. I did it on purpose. Yu Lily laughed, and her eyes were wet. She laughed louder and louder, with sick revenge. "Ck, I don't want your child, so I want to abort it. Who let you touch me? Now it's not my fault. You killed your own child with your own hands. Are you satisfied with my answer? Are you happy?" Heh. Ming glared at her and took a big step forward. He stretched out his hand and strangled her neck. Yu Lily widened her eyes and looked at him incredulously. Ming's eyes were scarlet. His originally clear peach blossom eyes were now filled with hatred. Hatred, it was true hatred. This man hated her. She struggled with her hands and feet, and the pain in her throat made her breathless. His fingernails gripped his hands tightly and sank deep into his flesh, but Ming only tightened his grip. He wanted to kill her. He was serious. Yu Lily closed her eyes in despair, and tears flowed down from the corner of her eyes. Suddenly, there was a cry of surprise at the door. Chapter 8:26. Yu Lily's head was buzzing. After her neck was released, she coughed violently. The pain in her throat went straight to her heart and made her tears flow. Fresh air came in. Yu Lily's eyes were red, and she stared at him, covering her neck. Ming was held down by several doctors at the moment, staring at her with scarlet eyes. Yu Lily's face showed a retaliatory smile, and she whispered cruelly, Ming, you will regret it. You will regret it, and I will never forgive you again. No matter how you beg me, I will never forgive you again. Yu Lily, swear here. However, Ming seemed to hear a joke and sneered. Regret? The only thing I regret is having sex with a woman like you. The sharp words, like a sharp sword, went straight through her heart, mercilessly. Yu Lily's face became more and more pale. Ming looked at her with hatred and sadness. Because of you, I killed my brother. Unless my second brother comes back to life, otherwise, I will have nothing to do with you in this life. Get out. Don't appear in Kingstown in the future, or I will find someone to kill you. B*TCH. B*TCH. He called me a B*TCH? Yu Lily covered her neck, and tears flowed down. However, she soon caught another point in this sentence. Unless my second brother comes back to life. Yu Lily couldn't believe it and asked, Li Xiqing is dead? Ming felt more like a fool, madly trying to push away the doctors who grabbed his hands, but it was in vain. He simply stopped struggling and looked at Yu Lily with cold eyes. He is dead because of me and because of you. The two children in my second wife's belly, a boy and a girl, because of you, the twins lost their father before they were born. How can you be so vicious? How can you? Because of her, the two children became posthumous children. Yu Lily's heart, during that time, was quiet and dark. After staying in the hospital for a few days, Yu Lily bought a ticket to Dali. Before leaving, she went to the old house of the Li family to see Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi was much stronger than she had imagined. Although her eyes were swollen like peaches, she was still holding on. Yu Lily hugged her and apologized, but in the end, she cried with her. She did not tell Su Qianxi about her miscarriage. After saying goodbye, Yu Lily took her luggage and went to the airport alone. A little girl was sitting in the departure lounge, holding a small MP3 player and playing music in a low voice. What else could I have done? In the end you end up as a lover. You never think, why am I doing this? Love you till the end, not painful at all. The message is arguing, who loved once. I only have one face left, no look of regret. You can't be at my wedding. After listening to your love song, I got in the car. Loving you was worth it. One night, I had a dream. You are white-haired and say take me to wander. I still won't hesitate. I'll follow you to heaven. No matter what, I can stay with you till dawn. Sitting in the waiting room, Yu Lily's throat was sore. She raised her head, closed her eyes, and slightly opened her mouth to let the air in. Her heart and eyelids were terribly sore. Get out. Don't appear in Kingstown in the future, or I will find someone to kill you. Bitch. Goodbye, Ming. Chapter 8:27. Beep, beep, beep. The sound of the heartbeat machine came steadily. Yu Lily opened her eyes and saw a man in a white coat and a mask. After seeing her wake up and giving her a series of tests, Yu Lily's mind was still muddy. She is in the hospital. Not dead yet. Sure enough, the lower the life, the harder it is to die. Yu Lily closed her eyes and fell asleep again. When she woke up again, it was dark. She tried to sit up, but she had no strength. Sitting up, Yu Lily found that the light in the ward was not turned on, and it should be evening. It was gray. The single bed, the good equipment, and the unusual bed all let her know that this was at least an intensive care unit. This kind of ward cost at least a few thousand yuan a day. Yu Lily was shocked and climbed down. After pulling out the needle in her hand, she pressed the needle, found a pair of shoes, opened the door quietly, and went out. Looking at it, it was really an intensive care unit. Because it was a VIP special zone, there were not many people coming and going here. Yu Lily's heart was beating fast, and she quietly walked out, carefully looked around, found a safe passage, and tiptoed in. "Miss!" A woman's voice suddenly rang out. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly ran down the stairs. Yu Lily didn't know how long she had been lying in bed, but she had no strength. Her legs were soft, and she directly knelt down, and the whole body tilted and rolled down the stairs. "Ah!" Yu Lily screamed, lying on the ground in pain, and tears came out. A nurse ran in, saw her lying on the ground, and was shocked, and quickly ran down. But when Yu Lily saw it, she was also shocked and hurriedly crawled down. The nurse saw it and was even more shocked and shouted, "Oh, why are you running? Stop!" "Only a fool will stop." Yu Lily stood up, held the handrail, and ran down. But she was really weak, and was caught up by the nurse in a few steps. The nurse panted and blocked her way. She was a little unhappy and scolded, "Why are you running? No one wants to kill you. Go back." Yu Lily's tone was a little fierce. She curled her hands around the handrail of the stairs and looked aggrieved. Unwilling to let go, she said, "Sister nurse, please let me go. You're right. I will be killed if I stay here any longer." Because she didn't have the money to pay for the medical fees. It would be better to just be killed directly. Yu Lily held onto the handrail, looked at the nurse, and said pitifully, "Let me go, okay? Just pretend that you never saw me. You go up now, and I'll go down now. Just pretend that we never met, okay? Must you force me to do this?" The nurse suddenly felt a little funny and looked at her, shaking her head speechlessly. The nurse ignored her and picked up her phone to call the higher-ups. Yu Lily took the opportunity to climb down, but the nurse's hand quickly caught her. "Hello? Come down to the 3rd floor of the VIP room to help. There's a patient who just woke up and tried to escape. I just happened to catch him." Yes, he's in room V8. "Oh, then bring his family here. I'm afraid it'll be a little troublesome." "Family?" Yu Lily looked up and shouted, "I don't have family. They are definitely not my family." But as soon as she finished speaking, she heard the sound of leather shoes coming from above. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat, and she looked up with an ominous feeling. Death. Chapter 828. Sure enough, after a while, they saw a doctor in a large white coat leading a tall and straight figure walking down the stairs. The figure behind the doctor was wearing a dark-colored striped suit. He stood upright with one hand in his pocket and looked down from the stairwell above. His peach blossom eyes were slightly cold, and she couldn't see his emotions. Yu Lily's heart seemed to be grasped. When she saw that figure, her heart ached terribly. "It's him. Did he save me? Why?" Yu Lily lowered her head slightly and looked away. Her eyes were stinging, and her throat seemed to be blocked by something. The nurse waved to Ming and said, "Family member, come here quickly. This patient actually wants to run. Take her back quickly. She just woke up and needs to be examined." Ming walked down slowly, looked at Yu Lily, and asked slowly, "Why run?" A familiar voice, but not a familiar tone. His tone was no longer as evil as it was in the past, nor was it as doting as it was in the past. It was as if there was a thin layer of frost, distant and indifferent. Yu Lily's throat tightened, and she swallowed a mouthful of saliva. After a while she said, "I don't have money to pay for the medical expenses." It was a simple sentence, but it was like a heavy hammer that hit Ming's heart. In an instant, his heart clearly felt sore and swollen. Ming's eyes narrowed slightly, and with a cold face, he took her wrist and stepped up without saying anything. He pulled her, but she didn't move. Yu Lily lowered her head with red eyes, and the other hand was tightly wrapped around the handrail. "Go back," Ming said in a low voice, and his tone was indisputable. He pulled her again. But Yu Lily just leaned forward, and then she tightly grasped the handrail, gritted her teeth, and said, "I don't know when you became so nosy." Ming stopped and turned to look at her. Yu Lily's throat was a little dry, and her voice was low and hoarse. In the stairwell, there was an empty echo. Ming, just like before, can't you pretend that you don't know me? Why do you have to do so much? Who asked you to save me? I don't want to live anymore." As she said that, her voice was choked, and her eyes were slightly red. She looked up at him with tears. "Why don't you just let me die? Why do you have to do so much?" When these words fell into Ming's ears, his heart, which had been tightly clenched, felt as if it had been bitten off by her. It was bleeding, and it was so painful that it convulsed. Looking at her deeply, Ming tilted his body slightly and suddenly smiled. His devilish smile was slanted upwards, bringing with it an uninhibited and romantic attitude. His shimmering peach blossom eyes were looking at her, as deep as a broken ice lake, cold and devoid of warmth. "Don't you know? I've always been so kind." As he spoke, he raised her hand and gently caressed it with his slightly rough big hand. He narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. "Just like how I bought you from a bunch of young ladies back then. I saved you. Shouldn't you be grateful?" "Ladies. Bought." Those words stung Yu Lily's heart even more. She pulled her hand back, and her eyes became redder. She tried to shake off his hand, but it was tightly held. Chapter 829. "Oh!" Yu Lily roared, and tears rolled down her cheeks. "I don't need you to remind me what my surname is." Ming's face suddenly darkened, and he stepped forward to approach her with a sarcastic smile. "Do you want me to pay for you again?" Ming, you... Ah! Before Yu Lily could say anything, Ming pulled her hand hard, and the hand that had been tightly wrapped around the handrail was pulled out. Then, Ming dragged her up the stairs. The doctor and the nurse looked at each other and followed them silently. Yu Lily struggled and shouted with red eyes. "Let me go, Ming, you are a pervert. You are crazy. Let me go, I tell you. I have no money to pay for the medical expenses." Ming dragged her up the stairs. Hearing her words, he rolled his eyes and sneered. "It doesn't matter." Yu Lily stared at him, struggled and shouted at the same time. "I don't need you. I don't need you to pay for me." However, before Yu Lily finished her words, Ming said again, "I'll lend it to you, and you can pay it back slowly." It was just a few words, but it was like a few slaps on her face. Yu Lily's face immediately burned up. Ming noticed that she was slightly stunned, looked back at her with a faint smile, and asked with an evil smile, "You don't think that I will help you pay for it, do you?" In one sentence, the last bit of hope that Yu Lily had was completely crushed. Humiliation. This man always knows how to give me the greatest humiliation. Hearing this, Yu Lily looked up and sneered. "Sorry, I just wanted to say that I don't need your fake kindness. Don't pretend. Do you think I don't know your purpose?" Ming, just as you know me, I know you." It was because she knew him that she was afraid. It was because she knew him that she knew that the reason why this man let her live in this world was just to humiliate and retaliate against her. That was all. However, she had never been retaliated against by him. She had no idea what kind of means he would use. Could it be that she would be humiliated in public like that night? Yu Lily's heart beat faster, and she couldn't stop panicking. Ming held her in his arms and clearly felt her fear and panic. Feeling suffocated, Ming's eyes became deeper. He sneered and looked away. "That's good. I thought you would be so narcissistic. It seems that I underestimated you." As he spoke, he had already entered the ward. He forcefully threw her onto the bed, not showing any mercy at all. Yu Lily had just rolled down the stairs, and her body was already hurting badly. Now that she was thrown, her body was hurting everywhere. "Examine her." Ming dusted off his hands and the part of his body that Yu Lily had just touched. It was as if he was dusting off something dirty. When Yu Lily saw his action, she felt even more humiliated. Gritting her teeth, Yu Lily got off the bed and shouted, "I don't want to do it. I don't have money. Don't hold me back. I want to be discharged. I want to leave." Hold her down and do the examination. Remember to do the most expensive one. This is worthy of Miss Yu's noble identity, isn't it? Ming slowly sat down and crossed his legs. He looked at Yu Lily calmly and smiled. "It's also good to let your colleagues know that there is a difference between Miss Yu and Miss Yu." Yu Lily looked at Ming and smiled. Chapter 830. The relationship between young misses was different as well. Yu Lily's heart was even more stuffy and painful. Her eyes were hot, and she turned her head with red eyes. She picked up the pillow next to her and threw it in Ming's direction. She roared, "F***CKU, your whole family are misses." The doctors and nurses standing next to her were all looking down. It seemed that they already knew the relationship between them and couldn't help but secretly feel sorry. Ming reached out and grabbed the pillow. Hearing her rude scolding, he was in a good mood and said, "It seems that you are in good spirits. After lying for 3 days, your strength is still so good. You are in good health. I really look forward to your next performance." Lying for 3 days. Lily opened her eyes wide and felt a little unbelievable. No wonder she was so sore and had no strength. It turned out that she had been lying for 3 days? But after hearing Ming's words, Lily looked at him with a faint smile in her eyes, which seemed to be sarcasm and disgust. Ming just slightly touched her eyes, then looked away and looked at the doctors and nurses next to him. "Go for a checkup. I happen to be on an empty stomach. Can I do it?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, I'll go to prepare. You bring this miss here later." "Okay." The nurse responded and looked at Lily. Then she went to get a glass of water for Lily, handed it to her and said, "Drink some water." Lily took it and only felt bitter in her mouth. She took a sip and put it aside, frowning. But as soon as the glass was put down, it was suddenly hit by a pillow that flew over. Lily screamed and felt dizzy. She lay on the bed and had no strength to get up. Ming just glanced at her, got up, and walked out of the ward. Lily was led to do a series of tests. In the last one, she was asked to hold her urine and have a urine test. Lily took a small cup to the bathroom, but when she came out, she looked around and found that there were no doctors or nurses walking around. So she secretly threw the small cup away and walked out with her head down. Lily didn't walk fast because she didn't have much strength. It could even be said that she was slow. Now she was on the 2nd floor. Lily saw an elevator open and walked in with her head down. He followed the elevator to the 1st floor. There were a lot of people. Lily lowered her head and blended in with the crowd, following a middle-aged woman out of the gate. Seeing the bright street lights outside, Lily's heart suddenly beat faster. She looked left and right, and after confirming that no one was paying attention to her, she dragged her weak body and ran out. However, her running made her even weaker. She couldn't even run as fast as some children. The cool autumn wind blew in, making Lily shiver all over. But he was finally out. Stepping forward, Lily was shivering with cold. He walked out of the hospital. If he remembered correctly, there should be a river near the hospital. Lily's eyes were calm, and she followed her memory to the river. However, they walked for a very long time. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe longer. It was about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, peak hour. There were many people coming and going. Chapter 831. Lily dragged her feet and found a low railing. She sat down and leaned her head against the railing behind her. She was a little tired. She had no strength. Lily squinted at the people coming and going. She was so tired that she almost fell asleep. After sitting under the bridge for a long time, Lily stood up when there were fewer people around. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, she struggled to lift her legs and tried to climb up. But the strength in her body was even smaller and more meager than she had imagined. She raised her legs several times but failed. Finally, she managed to climb up. Lily looked at the river below. Before she jumped down, she suddenly felt her collar being tightened. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She turned her head and saw a pair of dangerous eyes. Those peach blossom eyes that were originally shimmering with evil were now like 2 black gun muzzles, staring at her dangerously coldly. Lily was shocked. She wanted to struggle, but before she could exert much strength, Ming grabbed her by the collar and pulled her down. "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" Lily's voice was not as strong as when she was in the hospital. Her voice was very weak. Lily gasped and tried to slap his hand away. Ming loosened her collar. Lily couldn't support herself anymore and fell to the ground. She had no strength. Lily looked at him and her eyelids were fighting. Ming squatted down and grabbed her chin with his big hand. His eyes were malicious, and his face was gloomy. He squinted and gritted his teeth. "Do you want to die?" Lily's chin was hurting. She stared at him with hatred and didn't speak. The look in his eyes was as if he had seen his most hated enemy. Ming's heart twitched, and he involuntarily tightened his hand. His lips curled up and he said with a vengeful pleasure, "Do you think it's so easy? I haven't played enough. Do you think you have the right to die?" His voice was as light as a feather, But every word he said was like a poison that suddenly penetrated into the bone. Lily looked at him, and her eyes quickly turned red. She raised her hand and waved it toward his clean and smooth face. She wanted to give him a slap, but she had no strength in her hand. Her palm crossed his face. It was not a slap, but a touch. Ming saw through her intentions and sneered. He grabbed her arm and stood up. Lily felt uncomfortable, and her throat felt nauseous. I thought you would run away to find your old lover. I didn't expect that you don't even have someone who wants you. Ming looked at her with sarcasm in his eyes. It seems that there aren't many people who are blind. Lily was so angry that her eyes turned red. You've been following me? It turns out that you've disappointed me too much. Ming's words were tantamount to a tacit admission. Lily closed her eyes and didn't want to move. Seeing this, Ming's eyes darkened, and he picked her up. So light. This woman was so thin that she could almost fly. His big hand pinched her waist, and Ming's heart ached even more. There was not a bit of flesh on his body, and his hands were so skinny that they were only skin and bones. What kind of life had she been living all these years? Lily leaned on his arm. She was so dizzy that she didn't have much consciousness. She closed her eyes and raised her head, motionless. Chapter 832. After that, he gritted his teeth and strode back in the direction of the hospital. Lily didn't hear what he was saying and fell asleep. When she woke up, it was already midnight. Heartbeat monitor and nutrient solution were standard. When she opened her eyes, it was dark around her. She saw a flash of light from the corner of her eyes. She looked sideways and found it was a laptop. It was the latest model of a famous luxury brand. A very expensive model. There was no doubt that it was Ming's. But, why is he still here in the middle of the night? Before she could recover, the light in the ward was suddenly turned on. The sudden light made Lily subconsciously tilt her head and close her eyes. It took a long time for her to adapt to the light, and she heard the sound of a paper bag. Turning her head, she saw a young man who looked ordinary, but very clean and delicate. The height looked about 175 to 178, wearing a professional suit, and he took something out of a paper bag. The aroma of food wafted out, and Lily smelled it and felt even more uncomfortable. Su Cheng felt Lily's gaze, so he opened the lunchbox and said, "Since you are awake, get up and eat something. Master O just went out. He has been guarding you for several days and hasn't had a good rest. You can let him go back and have a good sleep later, miss you." Lily heard that and was slightly stunned. But before she could react, she heard a cold voice coming from outside. "It seems that Special Assistant Su is too idle." The sound of leather shoes came in, and Ming stood at the door with a pair of beautiful eyes, looking inside. "It just happens that the planning department is short of people, and Special Assistant Su can go there to exercise." Su Cheng was a little embarrassed. After putting down the things, he bowed his head and said, "Sorry, Master O, I am too meddlesome." Ming's cold eyes fell on Su Cheng with a threatening sharpness, and he said quietly, "You are meddlesome, but if someone misunderstands, it will be embarrassing, right?" When Su Cheng heard this, he felt a little inexplicable, but when he saw Ming's threatening eyes, he immediately gave in. Yes. Go back first, and leave it." Ming walked in slowly and glanced at it. "You bought such light food, how can I eat?" Su Cheng. "Boss, it was you who asked me to buy light food. Are you trying to blame me?" Su Cheng was flustered, but when he saw Ming's expression, he didn't dare to speak carelessly. He said, "I caught a cold recently, and I'm used to eating these, so..." "Well, forget it. Let's go back." Ming glanced at him. Su Cheng nodded quickly and ran away with his tail between his legs. Ming glanced at the lunchbox that had been opened. The porridge looked bland. He shook his head and said, "You're lucky. I can't eat such bland food. This is your reward." Lily looked at him and sneered. She pulled the quilt over her head and decided to ignore him. "Hungry. I'm starving." He didn't have any strength left in his body. But she didn't want this kind of handout. Lily closed her eyes, covered her head, and curled up. She pressed her legs against her stomach and tried to sleep. His eyes were tightly shut, but his stomach soon started to hurt. He was hungry. Chapter 833. Get out. Yu Lily lifted the quilt over her head again. Oh Ming, are you a bitch? You hate me so much. Why are you still pretending here? It's disgusting. Oh Ming's action of pulling her quilt paused. His internal organs seemed to be stirred by her words, and he felt pain everywhere. But soon, he chuckled and said, it seems that you still have a little self-awareness. Since you have this awareness, I am relieved. Yu Lily curled up in the quilt, and her heart was stuffy and painful, but she sneered. So, can you get out? Don't hurt my eyes here. Tut. Oh Ming opened her quilt, grabbed her arm, forced her to sit up and said, I am afraid that you will run away. It is not easy to make money these days. Your medical expenses are not cheap, and it is 70,000 or 80,000 yuan. Yu Lily struggled a few times and found that she couldn't get rid of him. She sat and sneered. Her big eyes looked a little sad, which made Oh Ming's heart more stuffy. Yu Lily's tone was a little sour and she said, Do you lack this money, Master O? Not at all. Oh Ming grabbed her and folded the pillow next to her so that she could lean against it. Then, he pressed his hands on her shoulders. His shimmering almond-shaped eyes were half squinted, and he smiled evilly as he said slowly, It's just that when a reptile like you puts in so much effort to pay off a debt, I feel especially good. Yu Lily breathed quickly, raised her foot, and wanted to stretch out her leg to kick him. But her strength was so poor that she couldn't make any threat at all. Oh Ming raised his eyebrows slightly and pointed to the porridge and side dishes next to him. If you don't eat, how can you have the strength to beat me? Yu Lily looked at him and suddenly didn't understand what he wanted to do. Closing her eyes, Yu Lily didn't want to look at him. Eating something is convenient to work, isn't it? Oh Ming's voice was soft and slow, as if he was talking to Yu Lily, but also to himself. Work? Disgusting. Yu Lily was even more disgusted. She closed her eyes and put her head down, trying to stay away from him. Oh Ming saw her small movement, and his eyes were slightly gloomy. He stretched out his big hand, held her head, straightened her up and ordered, Open your mouth. Yu Lily pursed her lips, turned her head, and didn't even open her eyes. If you don't finish eating today, I'll put all the financial losses I've suffered over the past few days on you. Oh Ming sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her. He calculated and said, It's not much. After all, the business in the capital isn't that big. It's only a few tens of millions. Yu Lily was furious. She suddenly opened her eyes and scolded, You are so shameless. Oh Ming took the opportunity to stuff the spoon into her mouth. Yu Lily was shocked and stunned. At the same time, she became angrier. She tilted her head and spat out all the porridge he had forced into her mouth. It spilled over the quilt. Yu Lily spat out the last bit of residue, grabbed the quilt, and wiped it on Oh Ming's body. Oh Ming sat where he was, and his suit was a mess. Seeing this, Yu Lily felt inexplicably refreshed. With a sneer, Yu Lily moved her body down and let herself lie down. However, Oh Ming's expression became more and more unsightly. He pulled her up forcefully and pressed her body against the bedside. He growled, Eat it. Yu Lily tightened her mouth and didn't move. Oh Ming Yao took a spoonful of porridge and stuffed it into her mouth. Chapter 834. Seeing this, Oh Ming was furious. But it was at this moment that he smiled. Putting down the bowl in his hand, Oh Ming held the spoon in one hand and reached out with the other hand. Under Yu Lily's horrified eyes, he grabbed her chin. With a force of his palm, Oh Ming forced her mouth open and poured all the porridge in the spoon into her mouth. His big hand pinched her face and forced her to chew. But Yu Lily clenched her teeth and closed her eyes tightly. The burning pain from her cheeks made her tears come out. There was no part of her body that didn't hurt. But at the same time, in addition to the pain, there was only a kind of numbness like a walking corpse, and she gasped uninterestedly. Living is really boring. But why don't you let me die? Yu Lily's chest was tearing pain, and tears came out in a moment. Oh Ming saw her tears, and the determination on his face suddenly wavered. Unconsciously, his palm had slightly loosened. Yu Lily opened her eyes, reached out, and tried to remove his hand. Oh Ming did not insist and slowly loosened his grip. Yu Lily's eyes were red, and she stared at him with hatred. Oh Ming only felt that there was a heat wave rolling in his chest, overwhelming him and suffocating him. When he was about to speak, He saw Yu Lily open her mouth and spit. The porridge in her mouth was all sprayed out. Oh Ming closed his eyes at the same time. His face and body were full of half-chewed rice. He reached out and wiped his hands, which were full of filth. When he looked down, it was a tragic sight. I have never tried to be so dirty. Seeing this, Oh Ming's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. He clenched his fists, gritted his teeth and growled, "You Lily!" Yu Lily laughed with a pleasant feeling, looked at him, and gave him the middle finger. Seeing this, Oh Ming also laughed, threw the spoon in his hand, and stretched out his hands. Seeing this, Yu Lily closed her eyes, raised her face, and exposed her neck. Seeing this, Oh Ming was even more heartbroken, and the uncontrollable discomfort eroded him wave by wave. Did she think he was going to strangle her? His throat felt empty, and his hands slowly fell. One fell on her shoulder, and the other fell on the side of her face. He whispered, "Why are you doing this?" His voice was low and slow, carrying an indescribable gentleness. Yu Lily felt a thump and suddenly opened her eyes. Her weak and listless eyes stared at him. "Why do you have to make me angry? You know that when I'm not angry, I'm very gentle to you, aren't I?" Oh Ming's voice was gentle, as if he had returned to the past. Yu Lily's eyes were sore, and she almost shed tears. She bit her lower lip and stared at him with burning eyes. From her angle, she could clearly see the red veins in his eyes. Oh Ming withdrew one hand and took out a handkerchief from his pocket. He gently wiped his body with it. His movements were elegant and noble. In a low voice he said, "What good will it do to offend me? It will only make your current situation more difficult. You Lily, weren't you very smart before? Did you choke on gas and ruin your brain?" Clearly, he wasn't angry. Clearly, he was very gentle. But at that moment, Yu Lily felt that she was in an extremely sorry state, and she was also extremely humble. As he said, she was embarrassed. Yu Lily chuckled, and her eyes were wet. She sarcastically said, "Maybe it's because you hit the child." Chapter 835. The child had always been the longest and deepest thorn between them. From the moment the blood flowed all over the bed, it had been deeply piercing them. As long as it was touched, it would be a heart-wrenching pain. 2 children, his twins. The woman he loved so much had lost them. Oh Ming's face became obscure, and the chill was like the ice and snow after the heavy snow in winter. It was bone-chilling. Yu Lily looked at his expression and smiled. She looked up at the head of the bed, and tears quietly flowed down. But in her mouth, there was such a strange and sick laughter. Just like 4 years ago, at the moment when the child was lost, her face was full of revenge joy. So cruel. Oh Ming stood up from the bed and strode out. Yu Lily suddenly relaxed. She had no strength left in her body. She leaned on the bed and sobbed in a low voice. He left. He was angry with her. Hiss. She thought that Oh Ming would want to kill her and help her get rid of it. How good. Dying in his hands would be the happiest thing in the past 4 years. But he didn't. Yu Lily opened her eyes and glanced at the messy quilt. She gently opened it and got out of bed barefoot. The autumn night was very cool. Yu Lily shivered and walked out of the door. There were only a few lights on in the corridor, and there was no one. She walked out slowly. Yu Lily pressed the elevator button and saw that the highest floor here was only the 13th floor. After pressing the button for the highest floor, Yu Lily leaned against the elevator, feeling weak. Ding! The elevator arrived at the station. When the door opened, Yu Lily saw a corridor. After walking for a long time, she saw the safe passage. If he went up, it would be the real top floor, right? The coldness eroded everywhere, and it was pervasive. Yu Lily was shivering from the cold. She climbed upstairs and saw a locked iron door. She pulled the iron bolt, and the violent cold wind blew over. Yu Lily was caught off guard and was hit by the great force of the wind, and she fell down the stairs. Bang! The iron door was blown by the wind and slammed into the wall behind. Yu Lily fell down, and the back of her head hurt. His body, which was weak to begin with, twitched in pain at this moment, unable to get up. So painful, so painful. Yu Lily's tears were blurred. Her whole body was sore and weak, and she was in so much pain that she did not dare to move. Why was it so difficult to die? She failed to commit suicide by turning on the gas, and she was pulled down to commit suicide by jumping into the water. Now, she just wanted to jump off a building, but even the weather was against her. Could it be that she had committed so many sins that even the heavens were unwilling to let her die peacefully? Lily lay on the ground and rested for a long time before she had a little strength. Lily struggled to get up, but she couldn't stand anymore. She used both hands to climb up the stairs, dragging her body. The cold wind outside made her shiver. Suddenly, the sound of alarms rang out all around them. They were caught off guard. Lily was so scared that she shivered. Her legs went soft, and she slid down the stairs. Gritting her teeth, Lily climbed up. When she finally reached the stairs, she found that the top floor was full of hospital gowns and white coats. Walking up and stumbling to the edge of the top floor, Lily felt a rare sense of relaxation. Free, I'm going to be free, Lily. Chapter 836. At 1 o'clock in the morning, alarms suddenly sounded everywhere in the hospital. All the doctors and nurses on night shift were startled and hurriedly ran out. The patient in room V8 is missing. Everyone, look for her. The patient in room V8 is missing. She has a strong intention to commit suicide. Please pay attention. Ming ran from one room to another and looked around. Finally, he grabbed a nurse and asked loudly, "Where is the monitoring room? Where is your monitoring room?" The nurse was shocked by him. She stuttered and told him the location of the surveillance room. He immediately let go of her and disappeared in a flash. However, before he went to the so-called monitoring room, Ming suddenly thought of a place. He pressed the elevator and went directly to the 13th floor. The wind was very strong. Lily was trembling all over her body. The railing on the top floor was unexpectedly high. Lily tried her best to drag several things under the railing, and then there was a little height. Stepping on it, Lily's hand curled on the highest handrail and lifted her foot up. But before she hooked on the handrail, she suddenly heard a thunderous voice coming from behind. Lily! Lily's heart skipped a beat, and she was scared to death. Her body softened, and the whole person just fell down. The ground was rough cement. Lily fell and felt pain all over her body. She screamed and lost all her strength. Ming's heart was empty. He quickly ran over and helped her up. Noticing that she was shaking badly, he felt even more angry and scolded her. "Are you King sick? Lily, don't you know to wear a coat on such a cold day?" As he spoke, he took off his coat and covered her body with it. Lily felt warm and opened her eyes weakly. It was very dark, and the light outside was all blocked by the railing next to her. Lily's eyes were so blurred that she couldn't see his expression at all. However, these words were clearly transmitted into her ears. With a low laugh, Lily's tears suddenly rolled down, and she helplessly let herself cry. Ming, let me die, okay? I beg you, let me die, okay? Why do you save me? Why don't you let me die? His weak and powerless voice was filled with humble pleading. Ming was deeply hurt by such words. Her heartbeat affected her eyes, causing them to become moist. Lily didn't notice Ming's strangeness. She lowered her head and burst into tears. She begged, "Don't meddle in other people's business. Ming, I beg you. I have nothing left. Now I don't even have the right to seek death?" "Who said you don't have anything?" Ming held her in his arms. His voice trembled. His throat was empty. He whispered, "Whatever you want, I'll give it to you." When Lily heard that, she stopped crying. Ming held her with both hands and pressed her head against his chest. "No matter what, I cannot die." Ming rubbed her short hair and said, "Live well, then there's hope for everything, isn't it? This is what you told me. Have you forgotten?" Lily could clearly feel his presence. At the same time that her vocal cords vibrated, her chest also vibrated gently. His voice was like an echo, entering her ears. Chapter 837. At that time when she said this, she was wearing a fiery red coat, with her long hair draped over her shoulders, and her little face was as proud as a peacock. Her posture was arrogant and proud. At that time, she lived like a queen beside him. Bold, proud, and wild. Who didn't envy her? Who didn't like her? How good it was in those days. But why did she leave? Why did she leave? The so-called first love was just one of the excuses. Was the so-called freedom really so important? Did she really get the so-called freedom? He only knew that after leaving him, she had a bad life. Very bad. Yu Lily, who used to be optimistic, wanted to commit suicide several times. When Yu Lily heard this, she suddenly laughed as if she had heard a joke. Lowering her head against his chest, Yu Lily whispered in a muffled voice, "Yes, I am hypocritical. Who can always be positive?" When the hot blood was defeated by reality again and again, even Yu Lily couldn't get up again. In the past, she firmly believed that there was no obstacle that couldn't be overcome. People who seek death at the slightest provocation are simply unreasonable. But when it happened to her, Yu Lily could finally understand why they didn't want to live. Sometimes, it wasn't due to external factors. It was just because she couldn't stand it, that's all. Tired. Too tired. The world was so big, and no one would notice that she was missing. Maybe O Ming would care about it for a while and feel sorry in his heart. Ah, Yu Lily died. What a pity. I lost such a fun toy. But, sad. Sad. There would be no. She used to think that he loved her deeply, but she was just deceiving herself. She couldn't afford to be with such a proud man. O Ming was stunned. After a moment of silence he whispered, "Yu Lily, don't let me look down on you. When did you look up to me?" Yu Lily's crying had completely stopped, and she chuckled. "What's your identity, and what's my identity? Don't think that people are stupid. In fact, no one is stupid." O Ming didn't speak again. He stood up, pulled her up, and carried her. Then, he walked down the stairs. Several doctors and nurses were preparing to go to the top floor. When they saw O Ming holding Yu Lily down, they were all stunned. He made way for them, pressed the elevator button, and watched them go down. Yu Lily fell hard, with bruises all over her body. The nurse took off her clothes and applied medicine on her. With her upper body exposed, Yu Lily was still lying on the bed. About 10 minutes later, the nurse was sent away by O Ming after emergency treatment of the wound. Just then, Su Cheng once again brought over a hot porridge. After handing it to O Ming, he consciously left. O Ming personally opened the lunchbox and said firmly, "Eat something." Yu Lily lay on the bed pretending to be a corpse and did not respond at all. "If you don't eat, I'll have to feed you with my mouth." Yu Lily opened her eyes. On her pale face, it was hard to see any emotion. She sneered and said, "I haven't brushed my teeth for several days." This man had a morbid obsession with cleanliness. He would never insist on it. Indeed, after hearing this, O Ming's originally calm face suddenly became a little messy. Seeing the change in his expression, Yu Lily closed her eyes in relief. However, suddenly O Ming reached out to help her up, and then her lips were soft. Yu Lily suddenly opened her eyes as if she was struck by lightning. Death. Chapter 838. O Ming held her head and looked at her with his eyes open. Yu Lily opened her eyes wide and looked up at him in disbelief. However, a moment later, something warm, wet and sticky came out of his mouth and entered her mouth. So disgusting. Yu Lily almost vomited. Subconsciously frowning, Yu Lily tried to push him away. But it was useless. O Ming held her face with one hand and supported her back with the other. Sensing her struggle, he immediately tightened his elbows and held her hands in place. He pressed his whole body against her and pressed her under his body. Yu Lily frowned tightly and closed her eyes as if she couldn't bear to look at it. She tried to turn her head away. O Ming raised her head again and let her throat straighten, and the food soon flowed down naturally. Yu Lily unconsciously swallowed a lot of it, which made her hair stand on end. O Ming finally released her, scooped another spoon, looked at her, and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Continue." Yu Lily retched, and a little tears oozed out of her eyes. Seeing this, O Ming scooped a spoonful for himself. While eating he said, "You are the one who hasn't brushed your teeth for a few days. I haven't vomited yet. Why are you retching?" "O Ming, you are getting more and more disgusting. You are not bad either." O Ming took a bite and found it quite delicious. "You actually like such a strange way of eating. Do you want to continue?" Yu Lily stared at him. Her throat was very dry, and she didn't spit anything out. O Ming took a sip, put it in his mouth, and was about to move toward her. Yu Lily turned her head, looked disgusted and shouted, "I will eat it myself." Hearing that, Ming put down the spoon, put his hands under her armpits, and lifted her up. He overlapped 2 high pillows and let her lean against the headboard. Then he pushed the small table on the bed over, put the bowl in front of her, and motioned her to eat. Yu Lily looked at the salty porridge, which was white and had a little color. She struggled to raise her hands. Her hands were also very sore, and her fingers were holding the spoon, trembling slightly. Looking at Ming's expression, Yu Lily picked up the spoon, but she couldn't hold it steadily, and the porridge on it fell on the quilt that had just been changed. Seeing this, Ming narrowed his eyes and chuckled. He took 2 pieces of paper towel and wiped the porridge off. Then, he picked up the bowl and scooped up a spoonful of porridge to place in front of her. Yu Lily glanced at him and shrank back in resistance. Ming faintly raised his eyebrows with an obvious warning. She pursed her lips, opened her mouth, and ate the porridge. It was quite tasty. It was quite delicious. Yu Lily didn't feel hungry at first, but after a few bites, she felt her stomach ache. So hungry. After eating half a bowl, Yu Lily didn't want to eat anymore. Ming ate the rest of the porridge himself. Faced with Yu Lily's strange gaze, he calmly said, "This was supposed to be my supper." In other words, it was Yu Lily who took his supper. Yu Lily lowered her head and felt unspeakably ironic. How could he act like this so naturally? Just like before. Didn't he know that this would easily cause misunderstandings? This would make her think too much. Lowering her eyes, Yu Lily gently pushed the small table away and said, "If you're done eating, you can leave now." Chapter 839. Ming packed up his things and put away the small table. He looked at her with a faint smile and said, "I'll sleep here tonight, in case you run away again." Ha! Yu Lily felt a little funny. Who do you think you are? Do you care whether I live or die? Anyway, I used to be your sugar daddy. Ming leaned forward, scaring Yu Lily and making her shrink back. Seeing her reaction, Ming smiled with satisfaction. He put his hands on both sides of her. With an indescribable evil tone, he said with a faint smile, "I'm looking forward to our next cooperation. I want to play the sugar daddy and mistress cosplay again." Raising one hand, he lifted her chin, narrowed his eyes slightly and whispered, "It's just like before. It's very exciting and fun, isn't it?" Yu Lily looked at him, gritted her teeth, and raised her hand to hit him in the face. But before she raised it, it was blocked by Ming in the middle. Ming raised his eyebrows and looked at her with a smile. "You want to hit me?" Yu Lily sneered. "More than that, I want to kill you. You have to pay with your life, you. Do you think I will be afraid?" Yu Lily looked up at him fearlessly. "In my current situation, I can't wait to die. My life is worthless. If I can kill you, it will be worth it, Mr. O." Ming was speechless. She almost blurted out the name, but after saying it, Yu Lily was surprised to find that something was wrong. Seeing Ming's more and more meaningful expression, her cheeks unconsciously burned. With an evil smile in his eyes, Ming said softly, "Then you try. I will sleep here with you today. Find a chance to kill me." As he spoke, he had straightened up, and his long fingers slowly unbuttoned the coat of his suit. Yu Lily sneered, stared at him, turned over, and lay down. She covered the top of her head with the quilt and closed her eyes. Ming sat on the sofa, moved the computer on the side, and began to work. After noticing that Yu Lily had fallen asleep, he looked at the time. It was already past 3 in the morning. It was very late. She picked up the phone and opened WeChat, sent a few messages to Li Xiqing, and then closed the computer, lying on the sofa, and fell asleep. It was a silent night. The nurse came in early in the morning to check on Yu Lily. Ming was awakened by the sound of the door opening. He looked at his watch. It was already past 7 in the morning. In winter, the sky brightened very late. Picking up her phone, she saw several missed calls from Li Xiqing. She watched Yu Lily being examined by the nurse. After reminding her to keep an eye on her, she walked out. She called Li Xiqing, and he quickly picked up. "Second brother." Li Xiqing's voice sounded casual. From time to time, he could hear the laughter of children, which made Ming secretly envious. Li Xiqing seemed to be in a good mood and asked, "Is it urgent?" "It's urgent." All right, wait for me. With that, he hung up the phone. Yu Lily was helped into the bathroom by the nurse. She asked for a toothbrush, toothpaste, and a towel to brush her teeth and wash her face before coming out. She looked much better than she did 2 days ago. Oh Ming looked at her short hair, which only reached her ears, and the thin yellow face hidden under the short hair. His heart ached. You don't look like a human anymore, yet you're still so stubborn. Which son of a bitch spoiled him to this extent? Death. Chapter 840. Oh Ming washed up in the bathroom of the ward. When he went out, Su Chang had already brought breakfast. 2 servings. Seeing Oh Ming come out, Su Chang pretended not to see him. He opened the lunchbox for Yu Lily and said, "Have some porridge. It's good for your stomach." While talking, he had helped Yu Lily prepare the side dishes and porridge, and thoughtfully put the spoon on the table where Yu Lily could easily reach it. Yu Lily saw the dark circles under his eyes, which were obviously caused by hard work. She felt a little sympathetic and said sincerely, "Thank you." Su Chang smiled. When he was about to speak, he suddenly felt a chill on his back. His back was stiff. Su Chang quickly waved his hand and said, "You are too polite. Take your time. I'll go first." Turning his head, he saw Oh Ming's obviously unhappy expression. He hurriedly said, "Master Oh, I'll go to the company first." "Okay." Su Chang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. But when he was almost at the door, he suddenly heard Oh Ming's voice. He said, "Remember to have lunch." "Yes." Su Chang responded and ran away. Yu Lily saw that he couldn't wait to leave. She unconsciously bent her lips, looked down at the breakfast, and raised her hand to pick up the spoon. After eating something last night and a night of rest, Yu Lily's strength had recovered a lot. Oh Ming just glanced at her, sat on the sofa next to her, and started to eat. While eating breakfast, he didn't forget to watch Yu Lily's movements. After seeing that she was really eating breakfast, he was relieved. After Yu Lily was full, she folded the food and pushed the small table aside. Then, her eyes fell on the TV remote control on the edge of the sofa. The sofa was a little far from the bed, about 4 or 5 steps away. Yu Lily was bored. She stared at the remote control and looked at the needle in her hand. Yu Lily measured the length of the infusion tube and found that it couldn't support her to walk to the other side, so she propped herself up and lifted the quilt. Oh Ming was looking at the computer. He saw her movement, looked up and asked, "What do you want to do?" Yu Lily ignored him and reached out to take the bag of medicine. But before she put down her hand, it was taken by Oh Ming. Oh Ming was a little tall. He was more than 6 feet tall, almost a head taller than her. Yu Lily only felt a strong sense of oppression, subconsciously took a step back, but felt that it was too useless, so she stiffened her neck and looked at him. "What do you want to do?" Oh Ming asked again. "To the toilet?" His sudden gentleness made Yu Lily's heart skip a beat. Looking away, Yu Lily reached out to take the medicine bag from Oh Ming's hand, but he pulled it back. Yu Lily looked at him, slightly raised his eyebrows, and did not speak. Yu Lily looked at him. After a long while she said, "I want to watch TV." Oh Ming couldn't help but smile. He turned his head to look at the TV remote control on the side of the sofa. As he walked, he said, "Yesterday you wanted to die, and today you want to watch TV. Why are you so fickle?" "Ming. You Ming Lily," he said. "Chang you I you Cheng Cheng I Chung I Ming you Ming. Cheng. Cheng." Chapter 841. Yu Lily didn't receive it, and the remote control fell on the bed. This made Yu Lily even more angry, and she went back to bed angrily. Oh Ming hung up the medicine bag again and returned to the sofa to sit down. Yu Lily turned on the TV and found a variety show to watch. This was an old show that had been around for more than 10 years. It specially invited some stars to come and play games together, and the ratings had always been very high. Yu Lily watched for a while, but she couldn't find anything funny. Instead, she was even more upset. She sneaked a glance at Oh Ming and heard the sound of his typing on the keyboard. It could be seen that he was very busy with work. But why is he still here? Is it really just to humiliate me and prevent me from committing suicide that he stayed here for so long? He shouldn't waste so much time for things that are not worth it. Is it possible that he still likes me? Thinking of this possibility, Yu Lily's heart suddenly accelerated. But soon, she felt bitter in her heart. It can't be. If he really still liked her, why would he insult her like that? In the past, he couldn't wait to hold me in the palm of his hand and give me all the best. Although she was dismissive at that time, she saw how good Oh Ming was to her. Maybe this was the price. When she finally found out that she had fallen in love with Oh Ming, God took back all the good things that had been given to her in order to punish her severely. The laughter from the variety show was constantly coming from the TV, but Yu Lily felt bored. She stared at the TV, but there was no focus. Oh Ming glanced at her, stood up, and walked over to her. Yu Lily didn't notice that he had come to her side. The sudden dark shadow shocked her. Looking up, she found that Oh Ming had reached out. Yu Lily shrank and subconsciously shouted, "What do you want to do?" Oh Ming's eyes darkened, and he reached out to press the call bell not far from Yu Lily's bed. After pressing the bell, Oh Ming turned around and returned to the sofa to sit down. Yu Lily breathed a sigh of relief and looked up at the infusion bottle above her head. She found that there was only a bottom of the liquid above, and even she didn't notice it. The nurse quickly came to help her remove the needle and then went out. The whole ward was indescribably quiet. Only the sound of the variety show on the TV could be heard. The laughter on the TV was endless, but the atmosphere in reality was somewhat dull. Oh Ming closed the computer and glanced at her. He walked to the water dispenser and poured a glass of water. Then he went to a cart under the TV and fiddled with it. Soon, he walked to Yu Lily. He handed her a glass of water and a packet of medicine. Yu Lily looked at the Western medicine, pursed her lips, took the water, and stared at the medicine. Just looking at it made her mouth bitter. Oh Ming opened the bag and poured all the pills into her hand. He didn't say a word the whole time. Yu Lily looked at the medicine and drank a glass of water. Finally, she smacked her lips and looked painful. Oh Ming poured her another glass of water, but he wasn't in a hurry to give it to her. Instead, he put it in the cart and walked out. When he came back, he was holding something in his hand. After bringing the water over, he opened his palm. Chapter 842. Yu Lily reached out to grab the candy, but Oh Ming took it back. Yu Lily was annoyed and looked up at him. Oh Ming did not speak, but handed the water to her and glanced at the medicine in her hand. His meaning was self-evident. Seeing this, Yu Lily reluctantly took the water and swallowed the medicine, but she saw that Oh Ming had already removed the wrapper of the milk candy. Shocked, Yu Lily reached out and grabbed the candy, removed the remaining wrapper, and put it in her mouth. Oh Ming unconsciously softened his eyes. After throwing away the cup, he picked up the suit next to him and went out. Soon a nurse came in and looked at Yu Lily. Oh Ming should have left. So, he sent someone to monitor me? Pursing her lips, Yu Lily turned on the TV to watch out of boredom, but she didn't like any of the channels. Looking around, Yu Lily finally looked at Oh Ming's notebook. Asking the nurse to bring it to her, Yu Lily put down the small dining table and turned on the computer. However, she found that there was a password. Oh Ming's computer password. It shouldn't be the same password as before. Yu Lily frowned and entered his mobile phone number. Error. She entered it again. It was his birthday. Error. Oh Ming wrong. Oh Ming did not like to change passwords, and these had some special meaning for him. However, there were a few possible passwords that were displayed incorrectly. Could it be that he had changed his password? In the past few years, had he remembered other numbers very clearly? Yu Lily thought about it and entered the password she had used before. The computer was turned on with a light sound. Yu Lily's heart was beating wildly. Looking at the open page, she sat blankly. In the past, the password he often used recently was her birthday. He actually still used this password. Why? The palpitation that should not have been ignited quickly in her heart. Yu Lily's mind became more and more chaotic, looking at the screen full of information and documents, and the email page that had not been closed yet. However, she inadvertently glanced at an email title, Capital Rend Technology Company, Limited Acquisition Plan. Capital Rend. Isn't this Lida's company? How could it be? How could Oh Ming acquire such a small company? Even Yu Lily looked down on such a company, let alone Oh Ming. If it weren't for his high salary, Yu Lily wouldn't have stayed there. Now, Ming was buying this kind of lousy company? Why? Could it really be that he had too much money and was buying it for fun? Lily clicked on it and found that the document had already been downloaded by Ming. When she opened it, the estimated price and operating costs were far lower than what Lily knew. And it was much lower. Although Lida's company wasn't big, it shouldn't be so cheap, right? Moreover, Lida's importance to this company couldn't be underestimated. He wouldn't easily agree to sell it. Could it be that he had gone bankrupt? Lily's heart was beating very fast. The more she read, the more shocked she was. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she saw Ming's figure. Shocked, she quickly closed the document and pressed the sleep button. While he was walking over, she turned on the computer again and pretended to enter the password. Chapter 843. Lily pretended to be calm, pressed the enter key a few times, and said, "What is your password? I can't open it." Ming squinted at her for a moment, then went forward and closed the computer. He took the computer and sat on the edge of the sofa, not answering her question. The nurse saw Ming coming over, said hello at the same time, and went out. At this moment, Ming had changed his clothes. He should have found a place to take a shower and change clothes, and he looked much cleaner and more refreshed. Lily pretended to be disdainful, lay down, and pulled the quilt up to cover half of her face. But she did not turn her back like before, but quietly tucked the quilt, peeking out a pair of eyes. Ming seemed to notice her gaze and looked over. Lily noticed it and quickly closed her eyes, pretending to sleep. Ming felt something was wrong and entered the password to open the computer. The page on the computer seemed to be different from when he just left. It was opened. Password. He looked at Lily, who was pretending to sleep on the bed. "What did you see?" Ming slid his finger on the touchpad and asked slowly. Lily felt a little guilty, but still pretended to be calm. She opened her eyes and looked at him with a puzzled look. "What?" Ming slightly raised his eyebrows and chuckled, but his face was cold. "Don't touch my things in the future." His voice was gloomy, with displeasure. Ming's sullen face made Lily feel even more guilty. She sneered. "Who wants it?" Although she said so, she couldn't help but feel jealous. She turned around with the quilt and closed her eyes. Lily, you really think too highly of yourself." When Li Xicheng woke up, he saw a few WeChat messages on his phone. It was Ming. After calling several times and no one answered, he simply threw the phone aside and turned around to hug his wife. Su Chenxi was still in a daze. Being hugged like this, she habitually burrowed into his arms and then fell asleep again. Li Xicheng held her in his arms and unconsciously hugged her, his big hand stroking her waist. Well, she was fat again. So fat. She moaned and took his hand away. He lowered his head and whispered, "Get up, Mrs. Li." "Shut up." She reached out and covered his mouth, refusing to open her eyes. He turned over and pinched her nose, saying, "You're getting lazier." "Well, go away. I want to sleep." She frowned and waved him off. He chuckled and stopped teasing her. After washing up, he went outside. He took the kids out for a run, but just after running one lap, he received a call. It was Ming. When Li Jianyue saw that her father had gone to answer the phone, she immediately took the lead to slack off. She called Brother Mosen to catch worms together. After hanging up, he looked at the kids running around and was about to put his phone back when it rang again. This time it was Cheng Yu. It had been a while since Cheng Yu returned to the company to work. Perhaps because of Rong Rue, her working ability was not inferior to before, but more efficient than before. As soon as he picked up, he heard a piece of explosive news. "Boss, we found Bo Xiao." Bo Xiao. Chapter 844. In the colorful Yunnan, the sun was shining brightly. In the shabby alley, there were 10 children running around, laughing and playing, and the sound of children crying could be heard. Today's weather was very good, and the sun was very bright. An old man dressed in beautiful and neat ethnic clothes moved a small stool and sat in front of the door, watching the children playing, and from time to time said a few words that could not be understood. Rong Anna was drying clothes on the roof, humming a tune. After drying all the clothes, She stood on the railing on the edge of the roof, looked at the golden sun hanging in the distance, and stretched. With one hand on her slightly bulging belly, Rong Anna's body was warm by the sun, and at the same time, her face was also full of the glory of maternal love. In the distance, there were domestic dogs barking, and the sound of electric car horns came up. The mood was quiet and peaceful. It was good. If she could live like this forever, it would be a good choice. In a beautiful small city, doing a small business, with a husband and children by her side, working at sunrise and resting at sunset. However, the cruel reality had turned this simple idea into an extravagant hope. Rong Anna looked down and inadvertently saw a few men in simple casual clothes, looking at each other and carefully hiding at the end of the alley. Some of them were smoking, but their postures were tall and straight. They were all very healthy and strong. One of them was holding a mobile phone and making a phone call, and just on the other side of the box, there was another line of people standing. Rong Anna immediately had an ominous premonition. After looking around, she finally saw a car that looked like a police car about 2 alleys away. But she could only see a little bit, and it was difficult to see the whole picture. Shocked, Rong Anna carried the basket to dry clothes and ran down from the top floor. Back to the small house she rented, Rong Anna pushed the door and went in. Bo Xiao was on the phone in the room, and his face didn't seem to be very good. Rong Anna went in and saw his expression, but she didn't speak immediately. Bo Xiao's mood seemed to be rotten, and he shouted at the phone, "Old Sue, you are so boring at least." "Hello." The phone was hung up, and Bo Xiao was furious and scolded, "Damn it! Xiao, what happened?" "Old Sue's group of grandsons. Didn't they say they were going to pick up our goods last time? They haven't moved for so long. I just called to ask, and he said he doesn't want the goods anymore." *T. When Rong Anna heard this, her face changed. "Old Sue's goods couldn't be moved out last time, so we took over. How can he? Now that you see that we can't do it, you don't want to work with us anymore. When we make a comeback, we will definitely take revenge." Bo Xiao placed his hands on the table and scratched his head in frustration. "No, we can't just sit here and do nothing. Anna, let's go." Rong Anna frowned all the time. She stepped forward and said, "Xiao, there may be police outside." Bo Xiao was shocked and looked up at her. "What?" Rong Anna grabbed his hand, looked at him and said, "On both sides of the alley, there is no one blocking the back door. Now let's go from the back door." Seeing this, Bo Xiao also understood the seriousness of the matter. Chapter 845. As soon as they opened the door, they saw 3 men standing at the door. They were wearing casual clothes, but all of them looked at them coldly. Both Bo Xiao and Rong Anna's faces changed, and their hands clasped tightly together. One of the leaders took out his police ID and said, "I am Zhou Minxia of the XX Crime Squad. Now there is sufficient evidence that you are suspected of smuggling, drug trafficking, and other illegal transactions. Please come with us." Seeing this, Bo Xiao smiled elegantly and said unhurriedly, "Officer, I'm a good citizen. Did you find the wrong person?" "Bo Xiao, Rong Anna, we are arresting you. Let's go." A few people came up and surrounded them from left and right. The rest of the people searched the room. Rong Anna and Bo Xiao were both arrested and quickly escorted downstairs. Many people gathered around and recognized Rong Anna and Bo Xiao at a glance, the 2 temporary guests who were incompatible with them. Rong Anna and Bo Xiao were forced into the police car, and the 2 were sitting in the front and back. Without any precaution, they were taken to the police station. Chang Yu felt a little lost all day. At lunch at home, Rong Rui noticed something was wrong with her. Giving her a piece of meat, he asked casually, "Are you thinking of me?" She glanced at him and called, "Rong Rui." "Yes." "Why did you like me in the first place?" "Because you are good-looking." Rong Rui replied without thinking, coaxing the child while eating. "Really?" "Yes." "Not because of other purposes?" Chang Yu looked at him, a little emotional. Rong Rui paused, and his amber eyes deepened. Looking at her, he asked, "What did he say to you?" Chang Yu heard the words, shook her head, and felt a little frustrated. "No, I found it myself. You and Rong Anna are cousins. You provided the news of Rong Anna and Bo Xiao to the police. You gave them money to let them escape, and then reported their movements. Why did you do this?" Isn't she your cousin? Yes. Rong Rue put down his chopsticks, looked at her, and said, Rong Anna is my cousin, and Su Chenxi is also my cousin. Anna and Bo Xiao have made a big mistake. I gave them money to test them. The amount of cash I gave them was enough for them to escape. If they had withdrawn the money from abroad, I would have pretended that nothing had happened, but they were still in the country. The border between China and Myanmar. So, you betrayed them? They or you, I can only choose one side. Rong Rue gazed at her and said, Bo Xiao is extremely mean and very vengeful. If he is still in the country, he will definitely hurt Li Xiqing and Su Chenxi. They are very important to you, aren't they? If they had left the realm, I could have made it so that they would never be able to return, but they didn't. It's obvious that they have other plans. Rong Rue's eyes darkened. No matter what their plans are, they are doomed to fail. Instead of letting them make mistakes again and again, it is better to let them spend the rest of their lives in prison. Did you know that Rong Anna is pregnant? Chengyu couldn't bear it. Rong Anna will give birth in prison. Why at this time? Chapter 846. Chengyu was humorous and did not speak again. Rong Ponpon's little face turned red and she began to cry. She waved her little fists and kicked her legs unhappily. Rong Rue coaxed the child, stood up, and sent the child to Chengyu, whispering, Come on, mommy will hold you. Chengyu took the child over, and the little baby suddenly became well-behaved. A pair of amber-colored watery eyes, which were the same as Rong Rue's, looked at her and blinked. Chengyu's heart was almost melted by the cuteness. She chuckled and tapped her little nose. Li Xiqing is not at the company? Yes, they went to the capital. Chengyu held the child and lifted the little guy up. It seems that they went to help O Ming. I don't know the specifics. Anyway, there is nothing to do in the company these 2 days, so I was lazy. Okay. Yu Lily slept until the afternoon. Her stomach was growling, but she did not want to get up and wake up. Vaguely, she seemed to hear a familiar voice. It was a soft female voice. Yu Lily opened her eyes and looked toward the source of the sound. Just one glance was enough to wake her up. Yu Lily got up and exclaimed, Qian Qian. Su Chenxi heard Yu Lily's cry and turned her head to look over. With a smile on her face, she immediately saw Yu Lily's hair and said, Did you get a haircut? Short hair is so beautiful. Yu Lily rubbed her messy short hair, combed it, and looked behind Su Chenxi. Li Xiqing and O Ming were sitting on the sofa, talking about something. Su Chenxi walked over to Yu Lily and said, How do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Yu Lily saw Su Chenxi and was inexplicably moved. After being ridiculed by O Ming for so long, it was the first time that Yu Lily had heard such a greeting. It was a lie to say that she was not moved. Yu Lily had never felt so close to Su Chenxi. Sniffling, her eyes were red, Yu Lily shook her head and said, No. Su Chenxi saw her red eyes and smiled. She seemed a little helpless and said, If not, pack up and leave the hospital. You don't feel good in the hospital. If there is no major problem, don't stay in the hospital. I can be discharged? Yu Lily's eyes lit up. Of course. She went to the back and took a paper bag. I bought you some clothes. Put them on, and let's go eat together. Yeah. Yu Lily was a little excited and took the paper bag to the bathroom. Yu Lily hadn't showered for several days. She didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but she felt that her body stank. There was a towel in the bathroom. Yu Lily wet it, wrung it out, and wiped her body. After making sure there was no smell, he changed into the clothes Su Chenxi brought. Inside and out, but it was a little big. Looking at the numbers, they were all the smallest. Yu Lily tugged at her clothes, put on her coat, and walked out again. As soon as they walked out, everyone's eyes fell on Yu Lily. O Ming's heart ached as he watched. In just a few days, Yu Lily had lost even more weight. Under his ear-length short hair, his face was as sharp as a palm, and the dark circles under his eyes looked a little scary. Chapter 847. Su Chenxi was wearing a light cyan cashmere coat with a beautiful lace dress inside. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, making her look gentle and delicate. With a radiant face and delicate facial features, she was really beautiful. Originally, he didn't feel it when he was wearing a loose hospital gown. Now, compared with Su Qianxi, it was like a person from two different worlds. In the past, Yu Lily was more beautiful and energetic than Su Qianxi, but now, it was the complete opposite. O Ming clearly noticed the change in this. He lowered his head slightly and quickly looked away. Yu Lily did not notice the change in O Ming's mood. She greeted Su Qianxi with some excitement and naturally took her arm. Su Qianxi and Yu Lily walked out first. She turned to the two men and shouted, "Remember to go through the formalities. I will go with Lily first." "Okay." Li Xiqing responded with a gentle look and said, "Be careful." "I know." Su Qianxi waved her hand and took Yu Lily out. As soon as they were out of the ward, Su Qianxi couldn't help but grab her hand and say, "You are too thin. You used to be so beautiful. Why did you torture yourself to become like this? You are so ugly that you are not a ghost." Hearing that, Yu Lily couldn't help but touch her face and asked worriedly, "Is it really ugly?" Su Qianxi looked at her, nodded seriously, and said, "Yes, very ugly." Yu Lily felt a little unhappy and said, "Lend me your cosmetics." Su Qianxi smiled and said, "Let's go to the place to eat and wait for them." The two men seemed to have something to say. "They should not come so soon. We can wait for them while we do our makeup." Okay. The two of them hailed a taxi and went to a famous local authentic Cantonese restaurant to sit down. Yu Lily's body had not fully recovered, so she could only try to eat light food. After the two of them ordered, they took out the cosmetics in the private room. Yu Lily went to the bathroom to wash her face and put on makeup. She asked, "Qianqian, why did you suddenly come to the capital? Are you accompanying your husband on a business trip?" "No." Su Qianxi looked at her with a smile on her face. "O Ming asked me to come." Yu Lily paused and looked at her face. Su Qianxi did not look like she was joking at all. She said, "He said that you were not in good condition and hoped that I could come to stay with you for a while. Of course, Mr. Li would not let me come alone, so he came with me." "The situation is not too good?" Yu Lily looked away and smiled. Looking at the small mirror, the face in the mirror was so haggard that there was no spirit in it. It looked a little scary. It wasn't just not good, it was simply not good. If he hadn't stopped her, she would have died several times over. However, it just so happened that she didn't want to die because of his obstruction. As for the reason, even she herself did not know. Seeing Yu Lily's meaningful smile, Su Qianxi did not answer. Chapter 848. Yu Lily picked up the lipstick and put it on her hand. She put her fingers on her eyelids and asked, "What do you want to say?" "I also heard a little about you. O Ming's feelings for you are very deep. If it wasn't something very important, he would never have come to me. You don't have to be at odds with him. Talk to him. There's nothing you can't get through." After Yu Lily finished, she let go of her hand and looked at her. She smiled and asked, "Do you think I'm making trouble?" Su Qianxi was stunned and asked, "Isn't it?" Although O Ming seemed to be a bit unrestrained, he wasn't someone who would cause trouble without reason. When Yu Lily saw her expression, she took a deep breath and said, "Qianqian, the relationship between me and O Ming ended 4 years ago. Now, he hates me. He wants to retaliate against me. Do you know what I did 4 years ago?" "What?" Su Qianxi asked subconsciously. Yu Lily looked at her and couldn't help but hold her hand. She said, "I had an abortion of his child." Su Qianxi had heard a little about this. She looked at her with a firm look. "Why? There must be a reason. Yu Lily, it is not the first day I met you. There must be a reason for you to abort the child, right? Tell me." Yu Lily's hand trembled unconsciously. She turned to look at her. Yu Lily's breathing suddenly became rapid, and her eyes were red. "There must be a reason for you to abort the child, right?" It was a simple question, but it aroused all the grievances hidden in the depths of Yu Lily's heart. The first person to ask this question was Su Qianxi. It turned out to be her. As for O Ming, he only had an overwhelming and endless hatred for her. There was also endless humiliation and contempt for her. He had never asked her such a question. He had no doubt about the reason she had given back then. Su Qianxi clearly noticed the slight emotional changes in her. She became more and more determined in her heart. She whispered, "Tell me, Lily. What is the reason?" Is there something wrong with the child? Yu Lily's eyes were sore, and tears fell all at once. With a loud cry, Yu Lily leaned forward and hugged Su Chenxi tightly in her arms. Su Chenxi was startled by Yu Lily's sudden cry. When she came back to herself, Yu Lily was sobbing. Su Chenxi gently patted her back, feeling a little distressed. She whispered, "Don't cry. I just finished my makeup. Don't cry and ruin it." Yu Lily also wanted to stop, but she hugged her with both hands, and her tears flowed uncontrollably. The despair and sadness buried in the deepest part of her heart came out at this moment, and it was unstoppable. Yu Lily couldn't bear it any longer and burst into tears. After crying for a few minutes, Yu Lily calmed down a little. She released her slightly and sobbed, "Qianqian, that was my first child. Do you know? It was a pair of twins, but I miscarried them." Twins. Hearing this word, Su Chenxi also felt a sharp pain in her heart, and she couldn't help but feel pain. When the doctor told me that they were twins, I almost killed myself. Yu Lily almost choked from crying. She couldn't catch her breath. She took a moment to catch her breath before continuing. Ming wanted twins the most, but those two children couldn't be kept because... Chapter 849. Familiar footsteps came in, and Su Chenxi clearly noticed that Yu Lily's back was stiff. Looking up, she saw Li Xiqing and Ming walking in and looking over here. Because of what? Ming spoke with suppressed anger in his voice. It was as if he had heard something funny but was trying not to laugh out loud. He looked at Yu Lily with a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes and raised his eyebrows slightly. What excuse did you prepare this time? Tell me? When Yu Lily heard this, the uncontrollable tears that had been rolling down her cheeks shrank. Looking at Ming's sarcastic look, Yu Lily did not speak. However, Su Chenxi was annoyed and furious. She turned her head and stared at Ming. Her eyes were red and she shouted, "You've gone too far." The simultaneous rebuke stunned the three people at the scene. Especially Ming, who heard Su Chenxi's words. After a pause, he realized that she was talking about him. If it was Yu Lily who said this, Ming would definitely not hesitate to ridicule back, but it was Su Chenxi who said it. Sister-in-law. Ming felt a little headache. Looking at Su Chenxi, he did not know what to say for a while. Su Chenxi was so distressed that her eyes were red. She stared at Ming and said, "There must be a reason for a woman to hurt her own children. A mother can't bear to hurt her own children, let alone a pair of twins." She was the mother of twins, and she could understand this feeling too well. She was glad more than once that God had given her such a pair of lovely little babies. If anyone dared to hurt her children, then she was completely likely to fight with the other party. A woman was weak, but a mother was strong. I don't expect you men to understand, but you can't say this kind of thing. It's too much. Losing the children itself was very painful, and she had to bear Ming's words. No wonder Yu Lily wanted to commit suicide several times. Ming was speechless. And Li Xiqing, who was behind Ming, pushed him from behind. His face was serious, and with an unkind expression he said, "Yes, it's too much." Ming was a little confused. He looked back at Li Xiqing and opened his eyes wide. When did the second son he knew become such a flatterer? Where was his integrity? Where was his friendship? To hell with it all. Facing his expression, Li Xiqing was not moved at all. He ordered, "Apologize." Seeing this, Su Chenxi, who looked like she was about to cry, suddenly burst into laughter. Ming wanted to say something, but in the blink of an eye, he was pressed into a chair by Li Xiqing. Without mercy, Li Xiqing pressed his head and said again, "Apologize to my wife. I can't bear to bully my wife, but you, boy, made her cry as soon as you came. You've grown up. Apologize to Lily." "Why are you apologizing to me?" Su Chenxi took a tissue to wipe Yu Lily's tears, but she couldn't help smiling. Yu Lily took the tissue and bowed her head in silence. How blissful. Li Xiqing seemed to really love her. This was love, right? Unconditional tolerance and unconditional pampering. And Ming was just playing with her. He said he was serious, but he was just playing seriously. The difference was huge. Chapter 850. O Ming squinted at Yu Lily, but did not apologize. Yu Lily also did not speak. After the dishes were served, Li Xiqing and O Ming were chatting happily. After the group of people had dinner, it was almost evening. Li Xiqing and O Ming found another place to continue chatting, while Su Qianxi took Yu Lily to the mall. Seeing the dazzling lineup of brands that she used to like, Yu Lily stood in the mirror store and felt as if she had returned to the past. Su Qianxi picked up the clothes one by one and compared them with Yu Lily's body. She said, "This looks good and suits you." "Hey, this is not bad either." "Good, good, good." Yu Lily was in front of the mirror, and her eyes were shining. But in front of Su Qianxi, her face was a little hot. Finally, Su Qianxi gave her a pile of clothes. Yu Lily held the pile of clothes and felt her cheeks were even redder. Su Qianxi gently pushed her and said, "Go and change it. Try it on and see if it fits." Yu Lily looked around and found that the salesperson was still a little far from here. She carefully approached Su Qianxi and whispered, "Qianqian, I don't have money. This store is so expensive, Su Qianxi heard that and was stunned. She looked at her with some surprise and asked, "Didn't O Ming give you money?" Yu Lily was a little embarrassed. She shook her head and slightly looked down. "It doesn't matter. You try it on first. I will buy it for you." Su Qianxi looked at the clothes in Yu Lily's arms. "They are all so beautiful. It suits your temperament." "No, it's better. It doesn't matter. Try it on first." Su Qianxi gently pushed her to the fitting room. "Try it on and see if it looks good." Yu Lily hesitated and walked in. Finally, she took off her clothes and put on a black dress. She looked at the size. It was the smallest, but it directly fell on her body. It was too big. Yu Lily put it on and found that she had lost so much weight. She looked like a refugee. No wonder Su Qianxi looked at her with a strange expression. "Lily, show me when you are done." Su Qianxi shouted outside. She quickly opened the door and walked out. Su Qianxi saw it and had an exaggerated expression on her face. She said, "Beautiful." It was so fake. When Yu Lily saw his expression, she couldn't help but laugh. Looking at her baggy dress in the mirror and Su Qianxi's funny expression, Yu Lily pulled the hem of her dress and asked, "Really?" The waiter quickly came forward and said, "Yes, you look good in it, but your figure is a little slim. I'll get you an XS." "Yes, yes. Bring it over and let Lily try it." The shop assistant quickly brought a smaller one over. Under Su Qianxi's encouraging gaze, Yu Lily went in and changed it. Just right. The fit was unexpected. This time, Su Qianxi no longer had an exaggerated expression. She was truly amazed and praised, "Beautiful." When Yu Lily saw her like this, she also laughed. Then she changed several sets of clothes in a row, keeping the good-looking ones and sifting out the ugly ones. In the same store, she bought 3 sets of clothes. Chapter 851. However, Su Qianxi did not even blink and swiped the card. After Yu Lily went out, she whispered, "Qianqian, I will return the money to you later. Don't mention it. When we were in school, you helped me a lot. It's just buying a few clothes. You don't have to be so polite with me." While talking, Su Qianxi had taken Yu Lily into a store that Yu Lily used to wear. It was very famous and expensive. As soon as Yu Lily went in, she was attracted by the red coat in the middle. So beautiful. However, as the main item of this store, the price must be very good. Su Qianxi immediately noticed that Yu Lily was looking at the coat and said to the salesperson, "That coat, the smallest one, try it on." "Okay. Please wait a moment." The salesperson was not blind. The clothes that Su Qianxi was wearing looked simple, but each of them was very expensive. And that coat was a limited edition of a luxury brand, very expensive. Hearing this, she immediately took out the smallest one. Yu Lily had no money and no confidence. Seeing Su Qianxi waving her hand, she felt sad. When the salesperson brought the coat over, Su Qianxi turned around and pulled her to the mirror. She took off her coat and said, "Try it on." When Su Qianxi's voice fell, the salesperson had already put it on Yu Lily very sensibly. After putting it on, Yu Lily's whole aura was different. The red color, combined with Yu Lily's white skin that was different from ordinary people, looked extraordinarily beautiful. Although Yu Lily now looked pitifully thin, and the overall face looked a little thin and sick, because of this coat, she was full of the aura of a queen. "It's so beautiful," the salesperson said. "You are the first customer to wear this dress so well, as if it was tailor-made for you. It's so beautiful." While talking, the salesperson had turned around and brought a pair of red shoes on the side of the window. The heels were very high, a full 10 centimeters. However, this height was what Yu Lily used to wear most often. "You can try this pair of shoes. The combination must be very beautiful. You are so suitable for red." As the salesperson spoke, she squatted down to help Yu Lily take off her shoes and put them on for her. Su Qianxi looked enviously and said, "So beautiful." Su Qianxi actually liked red clothes, but she could not stand the aura. Most of her clothes were bought by Li Xicheng. They were either light yellow or light green, or white, pink, and blue. Although they looked good on her, they didn't have Yu Lily's strong aura. Su Qianxi felt sorry and waved her hand. "I'll take the shoes and coat." "Qian." "Okay." The shop assistant was overjoyed. A pair of shoes and a coat added up to hundreds of thousands. Yu Lily's heart was bleeding. He silently counted with his fingers how many years he would have to work to pay back the money. At the same time, he was also extremely satisfied with his current clothes, and his heart was jumping with joy. It had been a long time since she had worn good clothes. Yu Lily could tell the difference just by feeling the texture. Chapter 852. After shopping, Su Qianxi did not buy any clothes, but she bought a lot of cosmetics, in duplicate. The two of them found a place to sit down in the mall and ordered. Yu Lily sat in a chair, looking very tired. Su Qianxi poured her a glass of lemonade and said, "Lily, why did you abort the child? Did you tell O Ming?" The topic returned to the original point, but Yu Lily's mood was obviously much calmer. Hearing that, she smiled slightly and shook her head gently, saying, "In order to leave him, I lied to him that he killed the child." Su Qianxi heard that and stared incredulously. Yu Lily saw this and laughed at herself. "It's incredible, isn't it? It's too cruel. Before we talk about this, I want to ask you one thing." "What?" "Oh Ming, are you engaged?" Hearing this question, Su Qianxi frowned and said, "I don't know. I have heard of it before, but I have never seen it. I don't think so. If there is, it should be introduced to my husband. If my husband knows, I will definitely know too, so I don't think so." "Really?" "From another perspective, even if there is, even his brother does not know of the existence of this fiancé. How little sense of existence does this fiancé have?" Su Qianxi shrugged and said with a smile. After Su Qianxi said so, Yu Lily felt that it was somewhat reasonable. After a moment of silence she said, "At that time, the doctor told me that the child was likely to be deformed and advised me not to keep it." "No, why?" "My relationship with O Ming, you know. I have been afraid, so I have been taking contraceptives, but I still got pregnant. Such a child cannot be kept, so." "Then why didn't you tell O Ming?" Su Qianxi looked at her incredulously. "Does O Ming not want this child?" "I didn't tell him." Yu Lily twitched her mouth and smiled gently. "If I told him, I wouldn't be able to leave, would I? How did you? How could you be so pretentious, right?" Yu Lily laughed at herself. "I also think I am pretentious, but I really want to live on my own. Qian, I envy you so much. Do you know that?" "Envy me?" She was dazed. "Well, I envy your good luck, envy that you have a husband who loves you, envy your talent, your ability, your conduct, your popularity, your character, your mentality. A lot. I envy them all." Yu Lily looked at her with tears in her eyes and whispered, "If I were you, it would be great." Yu Lily looked at her with tears in her eyes and whispered, "If only I were you." Su Qianxi listened to her words and looked at her strangely. "Lily, are you serious?" Oh my God. Su Qianxi felt that the world was going crazy. "Lily, do you know how much I envy you? I'm very timid, you know, and I'm not eloquent and cowardly. When I was bullied in the past, it was always you and Ihan who helped me bully them. I remember it all." Yu Lily thought she was comforting her, so she drank a glass of water and didn't speak. Chapter 853. Su Qianxi looked at her and was not joking at all. You know what I was like in high school, right? In the past, you liked to dye your hair. If you dyed it red, I dyed it red. If you dyed it yellow, I dyed it yellow. There was one time when you dyed it green, and I also dyed it green. Do you still remember? Yu Lily thought of the past, chuckled, nodded, and said, At that time, I just dyed it with a hair dye stick. When the school checked, I washed it all off. Who knew that you still had colorful hair? In the end, I was caught by the class supervisor and was ordered to dye it all back. Yu Lily thought of the past, chuckled, nodded, and said, At that time, I only used a hair dye stick. Speaking of the past, Yu Lily laughed. How can you be so stupid? How can a normal person dye their hair permanently and change their color every day? Ha ha ha, Su Qianxi puffed up her cheeks and said with some annoyance, You're still talking about it? You made me so miserable at that time. I really went to dye my hair. After I dyed it black, all my hair was ruined. It fell off in bunches and broke. It was so ugly. Ha ha ha. However, I really like you, and I envy you. Because many people like you, I learned from you. You were arrogant but you were popular. I learned from you, but I was hated by many. I can't bear to look back on the past. At that time, some people secretly laughed at Su Qianxi behind her back, saying that she was imitating others. You are so stupid. Yu Lily's smile became bigger and bigger, and her eyes curved. Su Qianxi also laughed. You are so beautiful and so likable. Why do you envy me? I envy you very much, Lily. Not only me, but many people also like you and envy you, such as Lu Anan and Lin Wanting. They used to be against you, but every time they were defeated by you. Many people in the class applauded you, saying that you were doing justice for the world. I could not do such things. Yu Lily, why do you envy me? Looking at Su Qianxi's expression, Yu Lily was a bit dazed. Was that so? It turned out that while she was envious of Qianqian was also envious of her. The gloomy mood in his heart immediately relaxed, and he was suddenly enlightened. Yu Lily looked at the beautiful woman in front of her, smiled sincerely, and said gratefully, Thank you, Qianqian. Hearing this, Su Qianxi also looked at her and chuckled. Let's eat. After dinner, Su Qianxi took Yu Lily back to the hotel. Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing booked a suite on the top floor. In this 5-star hotel, there were only 2 suites on the top floor, one on the south and one on the north. Su Qianxi and Yu Lily were carrying a lot of things, but Yu Lily was so tired that 2/3 of them were in Su Qianxi's hands. She swiped the card and went to the top floor. Su Qianxi took Yu Lily to the suite on the south side. Just when Yu Lily thought she would take the card, Su Qianxi directly rang the doorbell. After 2 rings, light footsteps could be heard from inside. Yu Lily had a bad feeling in her heart, so she took a step back. The door was opened, and O Ming's figure suddenly appeared. O Ming looked a little tired. His light blue collar was loose, and he stood tall by the door, looking indescribably lazy. However, such an image had a fatal attraction for women. His almond-shaped eyes moved and fell on Yu Lily. Chapter 854. Before Su Qianxi could say anything, O Ming said, Where do you want second brother to sleep? Yu Lily heard that and looked at O Ming. Then she grabbed Su Qianxi's sleeve for help and said, Qianqian. If she stayed in the same room with O Ming, she couldn't imagine what kind of humiliation O Ming would give her. She couldn't stand it. She really couldn't stand it. If it happened a few more times, Yu Lily was afraid that she couldn't help but die again. Instead of being unable to lift her head and stand up in front of him, it was really better to die. Seeing this, Su Qianxi was a little embarrassed and looked at O Ming. She saw O Ming's eyes slightly narrowed, and an unspeakable sense of danger filled the air. Su Qianxi was even more embarrassed. She pulled Yu Lily's hand and said, Lily, you'd better stay in the same room with O Ming. I'm afraid that Li Xiqing will not agree. More importantly, she was afraid that O Ming would not agree. Moreover, if she wanted to make them reconcile, she could only let them stay in the same room. This was undoubtedly the fastest way to achieve the desired effect. Just like she and Li Xiqing. They quarreled at the head of the bed, but they made up at the end. Su Qianxi gently pulled her hand away, then gently pushed Yu Lily and said, Go in. At the same time, O Ming had already taken her hand and said, "They are living together. What's the matter with you?" Yu Lily's heart stopped, and she immediately breathed quickly. She frowned and said angrily, "You know what I mean." O Ming glanced at her coldly. His thin red lips curled up into an indescribable evil. He asked, "Then what do you mean?" Yu Lily was even more annoyed and sneered. "Don't you know what I mean?" Seeing these two people quarreling again, Su Chenxi coughed and said, "O Ming, didn't you promise me?" "I know." O Ming interrupted her and pulled Yu Lily in. He quickly drove Su Chenxi away and said, "Li Xiqing is waiting for you. Go quickly." "Then I'll go first. You have a good talk." Su Chenxi put down the things and handed them to O Ming. "Here, Lily's things." O Ming only glanced at it before turning to look at Yu Lily with a faint smile. Being stared at by him, Yu Lily's face immediately became hot. It was as if he had seen through her. It was as if he had seen through her. She turned to look at Su Chenxi and shouted, Qian Qian, how about you lend me a few hundred yuan? I will take a taxi back. I have rented a house in the capital. I will go back now. I just remembered that I still have a lot of things to solve at home." Su Chenxi's eyes were hot. O Ming slightly tightened his grip on her wrist. He sneered with some displeasure and said, "The shabby house that you used to commit suicide?" Yu Lily paused and turned to look at O Ming. She saw O Ming's pair of peach blossom eyes, with an unknown smile, looked at her and said, "The landlord has already driven you out. The deposit and advance payment that you originally paid have all been returned to me. They have been taken by me." Yu Lily was annoyed and blurted out, "What right do you have?" Chapter 855. Su Chenxi was locked outside, and suddenly felt a little flustered. Did she do something wrong? It seemed that the relationship between O Ming and Yu Lily was not as simple as she had imagined. O Ming wouldn't hit someone, right? Su Chenxi felt a little distressed. She leaned against the door and listened, but heard nothing. After a long while, she stood up and carried her things to the suite in the north. She took out the room card, and with a beep, the door opened. Su Chenxi threw all the things she had bought on the sofa in the suite and sat on the side. Her legs were a little sore. Just then, Li Xiqing had just taken a shower. He opened the bathroom door and came out with only a bath towel on him. Seeing her coming back, he dried his hair and asked, "Where did you go?" "Shopping, buying clothes, eating." Su Chenxi sat on the sofa, a little sad, and said, "Honey, I'm thinking if I did something wrong. I let Lily stay in the same room with O Ming, but it seems that she really doesn't want to be with O Ming. Will O Ming hit her? What should I do?" Li Xiqing heard that and couldn't help laughing. He came up and gently pinched her cheek, saying, "How is that possible? O Ming has been educated as a Western gentleman since he was a child. He never hits women. Will he scold women?" Su Chenxi looked at him, feeling a little nervous. Li Xiqing heard that and was silent for a moment. It was hard to say. O Ming's mouth was so dirty, but seeing his wife's worried look he still said, "No." Hearing that, Su Chenxi breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. "That's good. Let O Ming reform her." But it seems that O Ming really doesn't like Lily anymore. Are you sure this will work? I don't know. Yu Lily is a woman with a big heart. She wants a lot of things. Li Xiqing threw the towel aside and said, "O Ming actually likes her very much. Don't think too much." What big heart? Lily is a very easy person to be satisfied. Su Chenxi was a little unhappy. Li Xiqing heard that and smiled without saying anything. Seeing his expression, Su Chenxi felt a bit depressed. What's with that expression? If she was so easily satisfied, she wouldn't have left in the first place. This woman is far more complicated than you think. Of course not. I know her very well. You don't understand, Mrs. Li. She is not as innocent as you think. He pulled her up. I don't think she deserves O Ming. Hearing this, Su Chenxi was even more annoyed. She shook off his hand and said, "It's obvious that O Ming doesn't deserve Lily. Lily is such a good girl, but O Ming doesn't know how to cherish her. Do you know how many people liked Lily back then? You don't even know Lily. How can you say that?" Li Xiqing felt a little helpless and said, Let's not dwell on this issue. Go take a shower. She glared at him, stomped her foot, and waved her hand. Don't go to my bed tonight. Li Xiqing looked innocent and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Did I do something wrong? She had already turned around and walked directly into the bathroom, ignoring him. Yu Lily resisted and tried to take her hand back, but Ming held it tightly. Chapter 856. He forcibly dragged Yu Lily into the room, then locked the door and pushed her in. Ming, what do you want? Yu Lily was extremely angry. What's the matter with the house? Don't you understand? You almost committed suicide in that place. The landlord was very angry and drove you out. Ming slowly reached out and unbuttoned his shirt. His movements were slow and elegant. Yu Lily was even more annoyed and said angrily, It must be your trick, right? The landlord likes me very much. How could he drive me out? Heh. Ming glanced at her from the corner of his eye. There was contempt in his sneer. You're too naive, little you. You almost killed someone there. If word of this gets out, how are you going to rent out the house? Do you really think that everyone can like you forever? Do you really think that everyone can like you forever? That last sentence made Yu Lily's heart skip a beat. Looking at him, Yu Lily turned around and was about to open the door. Ming looked at her and said in a lazy tone with a faint smile, What do you want to do? Yu Lily ignored him and trotted toward the door. Ming said in a cold tone, Your good friend asked me to talk to you. Do you want to let her down? Yu Lily stopped opening the door and looked back at him. After a long time, she asked, What do you want to talk about? I don't know. Ming shrugged and walked over slowly. His leather shoes landed on the thick carpet without making a sound. But, don't you have a lot of things to say to me? He asked. As he spoke, his footsteps had come over, and the distance between them had been quietly shortened. For example, what you just wanted to say to Su Qianxi, but when you saw me coming over, you took it back. The footsteps had reached the door, and the distance between them was only 2 steps. Ming stopped, put his big hands in the straight and neat trousers pocket, and slanted his lips. The curve was not big, but it was evil and charming. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat, and she looked at him incredulously. Really? Will he really believe that there is another reason? Will he really believe that I didn't mean it? This result was far beyond Yu Lily's expectation. Yu Lily's eyes were wet, and she almost cried out. Excitement and elation instantly condensed in his chest and overflowed with words. Looking at him, Yu Lily was about to speak, but the next second, Ming said, I am very interested to know what kind of lie you almost made up today. The words on the tip of Yu Lily's tongue were crushed and swallowed back. Just like the 2 children back then, they died in the womb. The excitement and joy he felt just now had turned into a joke at this moment. Ha! Yu Lily looked away and didn't want to say anything more. She turned around and unlocked the door. Ming's eyes darkened. He reached out and grabbed her arm. Then he turned her around and pressed her against the door. The wooden door immediately made a dull sound. Yu Lily stared at him, gasping for breath. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.